Hello and welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show. My name is Brandon King. You know the name, you know the place, you know the location, and welcome on in. There's plenty of room for everybody. Come on in. We're talking Seahawks. Training camp has unofficially already kicked off. No more waiting needed. We're not to the action yet. We aren't got any stories breaking, training camp reports as of yet. But the rookies have reported. We are marching ever closer here to the true start of things, and it is a wonderful time of year. It's beautiful out, sun is shining, and we're about to get truly some Seahawks football here for the first time in quite a long time. It seemed like it's been 3 off seasons to me at times. But today, we're going to be looking at training camp and a little bit of an overview preview of training camp. Today's show is going to be more about some of the storylines that are going to be pervasive and that you're going to be hearing about as we begin into training camp. The things that are sort of at the head of the stack as far as both concern and hope goes on either end of it, maybe on either side of those things. And on Wednesday, we'll get into a little bit of more of the training camp battles that are going to be undertaken, because that's a big part of this story too, is some of the little battles we have on spots of this team. It's not where it's been at times in recent years where things are really wide open across the board as far as positional groups go. It's kind of set in at certain specific spots on this team, including even just to grab onto a roster spot. But today, we're going to be going into those items that are more in regards to just what's going on with this team, what's happening, what are those items that you'll hear reporters writing about story-wise, what are the things to really probably pay most attention, because within these items, of course, we'll have a lot of hope that if they are on the good side of it being the Seahawks, that it will mean that our Seahawks are in for a better season, for a season hopefully for more success or quicker to success, as many of us are hoping, as we understand this may be a rebuild year, but there is a lot of hope out there in the Seahawks fandom, and understandably so, because this is a very talented team, and we know Coach Mike Macdonald is a very talented coach. So let's go through some of these initial items and talk about just some of these storylines to me that stood out as the things that, well, maybe me, but at least stands at the head of my brain as far as, okay, these are what I'm going to be kind of paying closest attention to and wanting to make sure that we're going to be okay, to know that I can potentially predict success for this upcoming season with the Seahawks, or be much more hopeful for it, is maybe the better way of putting it. And first up will be Abe Lucas. Abraham Jeremiah Lucius Lucas is got to get that knee back to right health. This is to me, almost one of the most important, or the most important health items on this team of any of the people that you may have some health concerns on within. He, to me, is your leader there, because a healthy Abraham Lucas out there at right tackle, to go with probably, hopefully then would be a healthy Charles Cross over at left tackle, gives you your bookends to really solidify down this offensive line and allow you to settle the waters on the interior a little easier, because you're not having to worry about this fire burning at right tackle because you got a bad injury at a bad time. And the good news is with this is that Lucas, after early on this offseason, there was some touch and go about whether or not this was going to be a chronic issue or something that was going to continue to be chronic, and has to deal with it throughout his whole career, or where they actually could remedy it with surgery. And they had used the word chronic with it, and he had dealt with it in the first 2 years of his career here in Seattle. So it had been a pervasive situation that he was having to deal with. But they said they went in, they cleaned it up. And after initially there was some hesitancy about, we're not sure of where the injuries are at as far as this goes with him, or well, not the long-term health goes. Things seem to be on a little bit more solid footing when it comes to Abraham Lucas right now. There is this Instagram video that came out showing him lifting weights, and showing him lifting pretty good amount of weight at that. So he's not just trying to take some real light weight on his knee and be very careful with it. The other noteworthy thing here as you watch this video is that there is no actual knee pad he's wearing, no knee brace he's wearing, nothing there to try to protect that knee, which is oftentimes what you see in these workout videos, is these guys still have the knee on there and it's still being heavily protected. So a lot of room for some optimism here when it comes to Abraham as far as the knee. I know that we got the initial PUP list that just came out for the Seattle Seahawks, and that might have some people freaking out, and we'll go over some of the guys on that list in a second, including Abraham Lucas. But the thing to remember with the PUP list is that it's not like it was 10 years ago, where if you go on the PUP, it's an automatic 6 week. It's an automatic 7 weeks. Now in training camp, you can essentially bring a guy off PUP at any one time, any given time. So it's just at the moment that's where he's at. I would estimate, based on what we're hearing with this, is that it will not be a long period of time he's going to be on that PUP list. But nonetheless, This is going to be a big story coming into camp because when Abraham Lucas started out and he was healthy through that first 10-game run, he was playing like an immediate Pro Bowler almost. He was just about at that level right out the gate. And then the knee started to fail him. And like you saw last year with it, when the knee's not at full strength, he can't get out there and give you his best effort. You're not getting his best level of play. But when it is at full strength or closer to that point, as we saw in those first 10 games, this guy could potentially be a monster for us, not only solidifying that right tackle spot, but being an impactful force from that right tackle spot. Something we haven't had here in quite many a year. In fact, I can't remember the last time. I guess I should present this to the chat. Has there ever been a time that the Seattle Seahawks have had a dominant right tackle in play? We've had some good seasons from a right tackle. I don't know if we've ever had a dominant right season. And I'm not talking about superstar right tackle. I'm just talking about like upper level play over there for a season if he can give you that. And it's going to be based on that health and if that holds up with him. Next on my list is going to be another interesting one here. This isn't as much a concern or a worry one here. This is just, I wonder what's going to happen, how this all sort of ends up shaking out. Who is going where on this defensive line? Which defensive tackle will be aligned at this snaps, this many way? How are they setting it up in training camp? Is Draymond Jones really going to be working off that edge as much as he's intimated this offseason with some of his training program? Where will Mike Morris fit into this? Is he going to be a power edge like he was in college within Mike McDonald's defense, or is he going to be kicked back inside of the 3-tech, which we told us he was going to become when he was drafted here, and as they asked him to add a little bit of weight when he was coming in before he had his shoulder surgery that cost him his first season. So where are those guys going to go? How are you going to use Byron Murphy, who's shown a background of having some nose tackle and having some 3-tech ability, able to do a bit of both of those two things? It'll be interesting, and we'll learn a little bit, I would say, from this based on what people are seeing from training camp, by how guys are being used on that defensive line. And if you are going to training camp and you are releasing reports, I would highly recommend within those reports releasing out that where are the defensive linemen being aligned at? Who's getting a lot of snaps here versus who's getting a lot of snaps over here? Are they just mixing everybody up across the board here? And I even mentioned Leonard Williams. Where does he fit into that? Is he going to be your 3-tech most of the time? Probably as a starter, yeah. Is there going to be snaps with him over 1-tech? Or even as he said this offseason in his interviews, maybe even being slid out a little bit to the edge. He is the big cat. He can pounce. Would make a lot of sense to maybe potentially move this guy out to the edge and see if he could go out there and get some, especially as a power edge. Show me the tackle in this sport that's moving Leonard Williams off the spot. I don't think that's going to happen. So it'll be interesting to watch where this rotation lies, who goes where, who will be at their most impactful, or if it's as Coach Mack is also sort of put out there a little bit, and as these players are sort of backing up, that it's going to be pure chaos. It's going to be everywhere, everybody playing everywhere all the time, and that you're not going to just have some guy you count on of him being there at this spot for 80% of his snaps. Instead, everybody be moved around. And that, even Jaron Reed, the guy that they brought back to be a nose tackle last year, but who we all very well understand can play both nose tackle and 3-tech there. So a few of these defensive tackles, as they're built, as they have a background just coming into this defense, already have a good amount of ability to play in different positions. And then you have Mike McDonald's scheme, which is going to accentuate those abilities, which is going to lean into those abilities maybe more than any of these players' prior coaches have. So that's very exciting to see, and it's going to make one more little wrinkle within this defense that'll make it that much more harder to play. You already got your whole issues you got to deal with on the back end with the coverages and the flipping the coverages, what you see pre to post snap. You got the stacked boxes and the end up in 4-man fronts more often than not, and they don't blitz a ton, but when they blitz, it's just so hard to. You always seem to have a free rusher coming, and then now you got the interior of the defensive line where you can't really count on who's going to be moved where, or just because of guys aligned certain place pre-snap doesn't mean that that's what his post-snap responsibility is going to be. Very, very exciting stuff, and this is going to be fun stuff to track as we go through training camp with this defensive line, because they got a lot of good players now in this line for the first time in a few years. Schneider has quickly turned over this defensive line from about a off-season ago where you moved everybody out of house. Old Al Woods had to move on. Poona Ford, you've been a good soldier, but we got to let you go. Quentin Jefferson, hey, it was kind of fun the last year, but that didn't really work for us, and you don't play the run too well. It continued onwards and onwards and onwards, so you had to rotate everybody out, and in their place, you have flipped out a complete night and day difference as far as the level of talent goes. You've given McDonald, on top of a lot of other pieces on this defense, something that he can really work with, and the way these guys have not only the impact they bring, but the versatility that's also a centerpiece of a lot of these guys' game. Fun to watch, fun to see, and it'll be fun to track. Another one that's going to be a fun spot of this preseason to see, and I'm going to be interested to hear about the reports coming into camp to see how these two guys really take to things, especially once they get the pads on, especially once it gets live, once it gets real. And that is that Geno Smith and Sam Howell are going back to the spread. They're going back to the spread. That's right. These two men had very good college careers, very good players in college. Not just merely one-year wonders like we oftentimes see of these quarterbacks that are taken out of the draft. These guys actually both played very well for multiple years at the college level. We look back at their college stats, first with Geno Smith back at West Virginia, playing his 4 years there. He had 2 4,000-yard seasons, threw for 73 touchdowns in his final 2 years there at West Virginia. And he did it all within a spread offense, within a spread system. Spread them out and let me pick them apart. It wasn't under center. It wasn't him running wishbone. It wasn't him running necessarily NFL level principles at that time. This was him running the spread. And you see with the completion percentage, even in his final year there at 71.2%. Hey, we've seen that before. Something that sits at the head of what's very important to have a spread offense is you need your quarterbacks to be very pinpoint in their accuracy. You're throwing balls short. You're throwing balls quick. The ball needs to be in a particular spot, and it needs to be in that right spot. It's the difference between a guy making a catch and getting down or making the catch and getting decleated, getting his head taken off. And that's something that Geno is very, very good at, understands it very well. You could make the argument, and I'm making this argument, that he had his most productive year of his maybe entire college football career, tracking back to that 2011 season there at West Virginia with the 4,300 yards. And the 2012 was very similar almost. In fact, 12, he threw for 11 more touchdowns. So you could say 12 might even been a bit better because just behind him on the yards, but way ahead on the touchdowns there in his final year at West Virginia. But that was where you could say Geno was at his best. And you're not, I think, going out on a limb on that. Spread system at his best, going back to it now. And you know what? You know who else is? Sam Howell. Another guy. 3 years. Great college production. The year you're going to lock into is going to be 2020 of the stats I'm showing above my head right here. So 2019 throws for 3,600 yards in a spread system, 38 touchdown passes. 2020, 68% completion percentage, 3,500 yards, 30 touchdown passes. 2021, he goes to a completely new offense. So 2019, 2020, he's in a spread. 2021 goes to a complete new offense his final year there at UNC. Part of the reason why his draft value dipped was because of that offensive change in his final college football season, on top of the fact he lost 4 playmakers to the draft after 2020. But in 2020, he had a marvelous season within the spread system, running spread principles, spread them out. He with that, especially the spread concepts they were working off there with UNC at that time, there was a lot of the stuff that Grubb builds within his and bakes within his offensive scheme of still taking deep shots, not merely just a dink and dunk, but then I'm also going to hit you up over the top. If the shot presents itself, I will take it. And so at his best in a spread offense, Geno Smith at his best in a spread offense. And now these guys get to go back to what you could make the argument, and I'm making that argument, that they're going back to the scheme now that maybe best suits their skill set. That there was a reason these coaches back in college had them running in this type of scheme, and that they now maybe get to benefit from finally the full acclimation of spread concepts being wrought across the board in the NFL. That it's no longer this kitschy thing that's only being utilized by guys like Belichick and Chip Kelly when he came into the league, but now it's more permeating everything. Talking to a guy like E.J. Snyder with Bootleg Football a couple weeks ago about the fact that in air raid and the way that people think about that, and well, the first time air raid's coming out, and we've seen it come out with a guy like Cliff Kingsbury who didn't run it too well, and see how this guy can do it. I don't know. It's not really. We'll see if it's not really tried and true here at the NFL level. It's not been tested, but as EJ aptly pointed out, air raid concepts are all across the board in the NFL. You can find air raid concepts within the Kansas City Chiefs offense, within that still somewhat of a purified West Coast offense in many respects. And so it's already in the NFL. It's already here to certain parts, but here we're getting the full whole hog, not just the apple. And I think Geno Smith and Sam Howell are going to very, very much benefit from this, going back to sort of their origins, and it will suit to their natural nature as a quarterback, I think, very, very, very well. Next up, another health item on board here to be paying attention to. This is a health item that I think has got many of you notably and understandably very, very concerned. When we take a look at right now the interior of the inside linebacker position on this football team, we've got some worries, and the worries start with the fact that the two free agents that we signed this offseason, being Jerome Baker and Tyrell Dodson, are both on the PUP list. They're out. Now, this was to be expected. We understood that maybe one of them was going to come back right around the start of training camp. The other one, I think, was due to be back on like the 7th of August. So there's still reason for optimism that these guys will get back to training camp still with plenty of training camp to get their legs underneath them, to get themselves set in this defense. But it is concerning when both of those guys are questionable as it stands right now, not on the field playing. And then you look at the depth of the position. Drake Thomas, also out. Easton Gibbs, also out. Some of the guys that you're looking to see if they can round out to shape, also not able to play here. So this is very worrisome right now, where your starters aren't even playing, your backups aren't even really playing. It remains a place where, to me, John Schneider is going to have to make probably a move here at some point during training camp to reinforce the ranks when it comes to the inside linebacker position. It's just a little bit too light. It's just a little bit too lean. And I can't think that they're thinking they're going to be able to just get through the season with this as it stands right now, as it just doesn't seem to necessarily bode really well here at the onset of training camp. But much like the Abraham Lucas situation, the interior linebacker health here, holding up with those two guys, is going to be a big part of this team having success this year. Because if those two guys go down, you don't have the depth to call upon to get this thing right enough to be able to still, in my opinion, think you're going to be a playoff team. Maybe McDonald's just such a linebacker whisperer. Maybe he's just that brilliant that he doesn't need any linebackers back there that are, that level of talented. I don't think that's the way it is, especially when you look at the two linebackers he had there last year, being Queen, a former first-round pick, and Roquan Smith, a former top 10 first-round pick. I would argue he does need really good linebackers from a talented standpoint. That he's not just getting by with John Radigan down there for a full season at the interior linebacker position. So if these guys aren't ready to go, it doesn't necessarily bode well for our Hawks heading in the season for the hopes this year of being a true contender. You've got certain spots in this team where the depth's gotten better and more reinforced. Look at cornerback, for instance. But this is one of those positional groups that isn't. And now it's also been just a little bit leaner, lighter coming into training camp. It's got some folks concerned. I think it's rightfully so that there is that concern out there in the Seahawks fandom, because you look at go back to the depth chart here. John Radigan, yeah, that's your guy backup Tyrell. Drake Thomas, he's out. So that means we're going Patrick O'Connell and John Radigan. Or Tyrese Knight and John Radigan. I don't think there's many Seahawks fans that would look and say, if we have the majority of our season where Tyrese Knight and John Radigan are our two running inside linebackers, we'll still get to the playoffs. We'll still find our way there. Don't think so. Probably going to be happening on that side of it. Next up, this is another big one that is going to be fun to track. I love the fact that both of these two guys were kind enough to give us percentages of their installation during the offseason OTAs. I think McDonald says he had like 20% done, and I think Grubb said he had his installation of his scheme up there at like 60% or something. I forget the numbers, but it's all rough estimates anyway. But it will be very important for the installation on both sides of the ball to be undertaken at a very quick speed here for both of the two offense and defense, being that you've gone from the simple, you're going complicated. These guys are going to try to get this on the fly and done quick enough to get you to hopefully being able to be a player this year and not need that whole year for all the little finer details to really get fully instituted in. The good news is with both of these two guys, being McDonald and Grubb, they're coming into, in my opinion, a place where there's a lot more talent here than a coach taking over for a fired head coach in the NFL would typically see. So they're going to benefit from that. And they, as they said this offseason, as we heard with the percentages they both gave, and I think with McDonald it was like 20%, it's going to take time to get this stuff onboarded. It's going to take time to get all the little details put into place. You're not going from this thing that's like that. You're going from this, which is completely dissimilar, to that, which is going to make them take their time. And so the stories coming out of camp, we're going to want to be hearing about from reporters. When we hear about from the reports they're giving, is there miscommunication going on between quarterbacks and receivers? Are the linebackers and safeties and corners aligned when they're running those blitz concepts? So they're stacked fronts. Are they able to cultivate the flipping up of the script of those coverages pre to post snap in the secondary and do it fluidly with some of these young players like Tariq Woolen and Devon Witherspoon? I would think it wouldn't be a problem, but these are all new things these guys are really going to be doing. Before, when it came to coverages, you were the most predictable team in the NFL at the coverages you showed pre-snap to post-snap. It's going to be new. Working just stuff out like motions on the offensive side of the ball. The Seahawks, they were a little bit better last year. If you look at the overall motion numbers last year, I would argue, though, those numbers got a little bit amped up because of all the Charbonnet third down back orbit motion crap that he would do, which wasn't really motion. It was just him orbiting like a planet does around a freaking sun, orbiting in motion around Geno Smith to his side. That's not really motion. That's not really doing anything. Just a guy going in circles is all that is. So they're going to be doing a lot more of this being, I think, more tried and true a part of the offense, just within just the DNA of the offense. And so it's going to take work and time to get that put over there on that side of the ball, just as a small little minor detail within the other items that you're looking to try to, get into place if you grew up on that with this spread system, which is, again, night and day difference from the prior one of what you had to deal with. But how fast, how quickly can you get this installation undertaken? How quickly can these players take to it? And do the players then, in taking to it, find themselves feeling like there's an extra spot in my game that gets to go up a notch now? Like, I feel like now, whereas before, the scheme kind of put it on my shoulders and said, hey, fly or fall, it's going to be on you. We'll not put you in a position to fail, but fly or fall, it's on you. Whereas now maybe there'll be more of a feeling of fly or fail, we're going to give you a couple extra feathers in the wings. Just a couple extra feathers in there. Doesn't mean you're necessarily going to fly 100%, but you're definitely going to have a lot more of an ability a lot easier ability to take fly with it. It'll be interesting to see if we hear that from players as they start to have the light bulbs go on and go, oh, I kind of get what's going on here. I understand it. It's clear to me now. Next point up. This is going to be a fun one. This is one that has been a point that's been raised within my chat, in which I'm a believer in to a degree on, why do we have a team in the Seahawks at times that has, for instance, issues with tackling in recent years? Just team year in and year out, you have your team just having these issues with tackling. Why is it such a problem? Why is it so hard? Why can't they just get every year we got these issues with tackling? And it comes back to, of course, training, and it's harder with the NFL offseason schedules, the lack of padded practices, the lack of the two-a-days, the lack of the ability to get these guys properly trained to tackle, utilizing that old Coach Carroll Hawk tackling technique. But there also seems to be a general feeling, I think, and I do believe there's some truth to this, that maybe Seahawks weren't running the most vicious of training camps over the last 4, 5, 6 years. That I'm not saying it was Camp Carroll, but maybe it also wasn't those guys going toe-to-toe like in the early Carroll days. There are legendary stories of some of the combative nature of those practices with the Carroll and the LOB times, and it did feel like there was a moment there where there's a bit of course correction, where things had almost kind of gone too far in Carroll's mind, especially when it came to his quarterback starting to take some brunt of that intensity at those said practices, and he didn't want necessarily, I think, his quarterback in that mentality of things. And so I think there was a little bit of dialing the reins back. The NFL also pushed some of this too, because of course they penalized your Seahawks at that time for practicing too hard, took a draft pick away from us for practicing too hard. And so maybe this kind of pushed Coach Carroll to really, pull back on things. But for sure, for instance, over the last few years, you've seen we've not been a team that's been willing to do those inter-squad games. And there's been teams even within our own division that have been willing to do that. And I do believe that those are real rare padded kind of practices that you can simulate the intensity of almost a game at times because you have a true opponent going across from you. And I think that that's for the betterment of the team. Are they risky? Is there a lot of fights that break out because of these inter-squad games? Yeah, there is. But there's a reason that Mike McDonald's going to be doing these. You're going to get inter-squad game between the Seahawks and someone, I forget who they're doing it with, but you will be getting that between those two teams because he understands the value of it, and I believe in it as well. If they're going to reduce down the number of practices over the course of an offseason, they're going to reduce down the number of padded practices. If they're going to take away your two-a-days, then you've got to maximize more with what time you are given to go out there and hit. And that's what these inter-squad games do allow you to do. It's great to hear that the Seahawks are willing to do it. I've long thought they should. But in parallel with this, I'm going to wager to guess that this is going to be a lot more of a harder-driven training camp than we have seen in many years here in Seattle. And that will hopefully then met out a team that is a team that's better tackling, maybe more disciplined, maybe fundamentally more clean at times in getting things done. We'll see. But it will be fun to watch how high the intensity of camp does go, and something to really track and monitor, I think, here throughout this training camp, because this is a first-time head coach running it too as well. He does have that Harbaugh background, though, with both the Harbaugh boys, and neither of them are known for running light camps. No, there's no camp hard. There's no, you got some just easy-peasy fun training camp with Harbaugh this year. He's gonna make you work. You're gonna sweat. You're gonna grind. You're gonna bleed. And I would imagine that Mike McDonald is going to probably be cut from a very similar cloth on that side of things. Does Laken Tomlinson have one more ride in the bones? Laken Tomlinson is a man who should feel very proud of the career that he has had. He has had a hell of a run. NFL players have on average, 3 to 4 year lifespan. This guy has been playing since 2015. He hardly ever gets injured, out there every single week. Part of the reason that the Seahawks did sign him, albeit only to a 1 year, I think $3 or $4 million deal, was because of the fact that he has that durability. They can count on him to be out there. Question comes down to, how much does he have left? Definitely late in the hour at this point, into his 9th, 10th year here in Seattle. 9th year, I guess. So he's not necessarily, super long in the tooth. We're not like a guy's 35 years old and he's on his very last legs. But when you do look at what he's done recently with the Jets versus where he was with San Francisco when he was able to sign the big contract with the Jets that he signed with them in 2022, has there been a bit of an erosion in his play? Was some of the strength of his game built on the time in San Francisco where we know that they put a big onus on the quarterback getting the ball out of his hand very quickly? And that, of course, when you do that for offensive linemen, is going to help them out as far as pass protection goes. That's not going to be a part that's going to be as big and wide on display because of the fact that they only have to hold up for that 2 seconds rather than the 3 seconds that you might in another typical offense. And so they were able to sort of minimize some of the weaknesses within his game while then accentuating what he did well, which, of course, really run blocking and being a really good people mover there up at the line of scrimmage. Now, I don't want to say I know one way or the other on this. I don't know if you can blame anybody for being on that Jets offensive line over the past couple of years and necessarily just fully fundamentally put it on their shoulders and their back. You have the quarterback play, which has been miserable for the Jets. And it's been miserable in the direction that is going to make it hard on those offensive linemen. So the thing that I just talked about with Laken Tomlinson being that he's got a quarterback before, at the time he was there, was a Jimmy Garoppolo, and a big part of what they were trying to do was get the ball out of Jimmy Garoppolo's hands very quickly with San Francisco, and thus he didn't have to hold up in pass protection for really long. You go to the flip side of that with a guy like Wilson under center for the majority of the snaps that he's had over the past 2 years, and what does Wilson do? Hold on to the ball for a very long period of time, a lot of times when he's back there in the pocket. And so it's going to do the opposite for a guy like Laken. Makes a little bit of sense then at that point as to maybe why there's been a little bit of a dip in his play since coming then to the Jets because of that quarterback play, but it doesn't fully explain it. It doesn't explain, for instance, why his run blocking has fallen off a shelf. That would be the part that you think would still have remained at least somewhat consistent. But if we're to believe on some of what we've seen from the PFF scores, that does seem to be the part that has really, really somewhat folded for them recently there. And that's with having a guy in Breece Hall at least playing the last year. I know he went down in 2022, but at least playing the last year, they had Breece Hall there. So a little bit of a head scratcher on that one. This is a little bit of an enigma on this one. And why is it so important if Laken Tomlinson has one more right or not? Because the Seahawks, as well as they've done, and the good a job as they've done over the past 2 years in rebuilding the offensive line, much in the same way that they've rebuilt the defensive line from stem to stern, this is the one last part that's sort of still not been quite fully given its weight. You could make an argument maybe a little bit center too, but I'm not sure if Haynes is going to be able to slide over to left guard as much as I initially thought when we drafted him. Going back and doing another deep dive on the film with him, I come back around going, boy, I think maybe right guard will be his landing spot. I don't think Bradford's going to be technically refined enough as a pass protector to handle and hold up against those very sound 3-techs that he's going to have to encounter if he's going to play over on the left side. So the numbers game starts winding down very quickly here, and Laken ends up as the man of the moment to be your left guard for this upcoming year. And so his ability to still be a guy that can, not be a net negative on this offensive line. We don't need him to be great. We don't need him to be the centerpiece. He doesn't have to come out there and give you a Pro Bowl year. We just need him to not be a weak link. Just don't be the weak link over there at left guard. How's he going to fit with the mobility stuff that we're going to ask him to do and moving in space? Is that going to be something that's going to fit to him comfortably, or at his age, knowing that he's more of a mauler type guy at the point of attack, that's really not going to suit him. We'll see. But there is a lot that's going to weigh upon Laken Tomlinson being able to get out there on that field, because if not him, then maybe you're having to move Haynes out of a natural position where he's best at. Or maybe you're having to hope and pray that Bradford can develop and come along a lot faster there at left guard if you got to slide him in over there. So it's not the greatest maybe of solutions on any other alternative. Laken is the way for this upcoming season, it would seem. And the good news is that he's been working his butt off this offseason. Looks like he's been trying to get into his best type of shape, maybe understanding perhaps a little bit of the football mortality is sort of facing him here at his age, and that you may not have forever to be able to play this game. So if you still love it, if you still want it, then give it all you got this offseason to try to go out there and recapture what you got left in the tank. See what he does have, but exciting hopefully to see if he can fit in that spot, because if Lincoln can settle the waters down there at the left guard position, and if Abe can get out there on that field and maintain his health there at your right tackle, you got your pillars, you got your left guard, and we've got a lot of talent then for the center and right guard space to get itself figured out at that point, and then you feel really good about this team coming into, especially just this season, not just long term, but this season. Then you go, okay, I feel a little better with this offense and this team then, because you're not just getting by with sort of also-rans at that point. Next up, differences in scheme. This is a little bit of in parallel with the how's the process of installation going, but how much is it going to upend some of the players, the differences of going from the most simplified to the most complicated on both sides of the ball? How much is going to be in there where you're going to have guys messed up because there's extra details here that they never had to think about before, but now they have to think about? Versus maybe certain other guys take to it and have just been waiting for this kind of scheme to be instituted. Maybe certain guys could only really be really good in that prior scheme where they weren't being asked to think a lot, and they weren't being required to be moved in over here or moved in over there. It's a little bit of the wonder when you watch a little bit of Mike coming into play here in Seattle this year, is that they didn't necessarily spin everything out as far as the personnel goes to have everybody come in that we're going to just fit to what Mike McDonald did. We're bringing a lot of extra Ravens players in here, flip out some of the old Carroll guys. They kept a lot of the roster in place here. Was there some turnover with Bobby Wagner types going and Jordan Brooks going? Yes. But overall, there's a little bit of a, let's see what we got here in these guys first. Almost let's kind of, just as a lot of coaches tend to do this. Mike Holmgren did it when he came in initially as well. Let me just see where the roster's at. Let me see what I got. Let me assess. And then we'll pair it in the next offseason if we really need to start making really strong moves. Or maybe we have guys here that will fit to what we want to do, and we'll be able to pick it up well. So the differences in the defensive scheme are going to be a big part to monitor and track here as we go into training camp, because these guys have never been asked, I think, to be in as many details. DK Metcalf for years has been asked to play out on the outside. You're going to play on the outside. You're going to be the X receiver. You're going to be over to this side of the field. You know exactly where you are. You're on the line of scrimmage. Don't have to think about anything else. And now in DK, you're going to have a guy that playing in the slot, coming in motion. Sometimes you're going to be the Z now, DK. It's all these little places they might move him. Maybe even do like you get with some of these guys like Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp. These guys sometimes get aligned in the backfield and shotgun next to the quarterback. Could you imagine how much you'd mess a defense up if you had DK Metcalf aligned back as a running back and shotgun, and what that might make them do on the back end from a secondary standpoint? So guys are all going to be in different positions now. The details, the going from simplified to complicated, it's going to be a hard process for these guys to get this onboarded. So again, it kind of goes in paired with the installation and the timeline on that, but this is more about just the details of how is it going to go with these players who may not necessarily have been picked and drafted and targeted to be to these specific schemes. How do they fit into these schemes? Can they take off into these schemes? Well, we shall see, but I do think that that's one of the big stories for us coming into camp here this year. Another big story, another one very interesting to monitor, and this is another one that'll be on the good side of things, is the role for Boom Witherspoon. Mr. Devon Witherspoon comes into this year with a head coach who's going to walk into the door, who you could argue there would be almost no defensive coach in this sport better programmed, better suited to take advantage of the full skill set that a Witherspoon has to provide than a Mike Macdonald. So as I was listening to about somebody mention this as well recently, a big part of Mike taking even this job, not a big part, but a part of Mike taking this job is the understanding he's got Witherspoon now to play with. That I got a guy here that I got a piece, a weapon I can use, unlike I've had anything necessarily quite close to. And I know a lot of people like Kyle Hamilton out there with the Ravens. I love Hamilton. Sensational player. And he is absolutely one of the best in the business doing it. But the upside of Witherspoon is even beyond that, in my opinion. Is he a little slighter? Is he a couple inches smaller? Yeah, but size of the dog, size of the fight, the dog, all that old thing, And show me a dog with more fight than Devon, I'll show you a liar. So where is he going to fit? What's the role going to be? I have long believed that it is going to be the Kyle Hamilton role. That he'll fit him into that and he'll set him free on that role and he'll let him loose. Mainly, you're operating then within the slot. Maybe he would have some snaps out there even at times in safety here and there at that point, which Hamilton does, where majority of snaps for Hamilton are going to be down there at the slot, but there's some that you're going to get from him there at safety. Or do they flip the role up with Witherspoon, where he's just going to be down there in the slot, and if you get into base situations where it's two tight ends, two wide receivers, now he goes to the outside and he's your outside corner with Tariq Woolen on the other side. Kind of a la like what we've done last year. So it'll be interesting to see what role they fit into him, or even is there a third aspect to this where he's just constantly moved all over the place. Just moved every which way but loose. The season I keep coming back to when I think of Witherspoon and the potential of what he could bring is Charles Woodson's Defensive Player of the Year, award-winning year with the Packers. I think it was the year they might have won the Super Bowl in 2007. And he was in the slot mainly there. You can find snaps from that year. He was on the outside. You can find snaps that year where he's playing the slot, where he's taking tight ends on, where he's taking on outside receivers, where he's blitzing off the edge, just doing everything within that defense and playing the run really well. And Witherspoon's going to do that same thing, I think, within this defense. But how that role features him exactly, we'll see. That'll be part of the fun part to kind of track this training camp, is there's a couple of options there for Macdonald, including that option I said at the end, which is just I'll create my own new role for him here. I'm just going to put him all over the place. It won't be, he's either slot or safety, or he's either slot or outside. It's going to be like, yes, slot, outside, safety. I'll put him as my will linebacker at times. I'm going to get crazy with it. Next up, nobody was tearing up OTAs perhaps better or more in the Seahawks than Jackson Smith-Njigba. The route ninja absolutely went off. What do you have? 5 touchdowns on they did sort of the red zone drills at the end of one of the practices. I think he had 5 touchdown catches in the red zone drill. Absolutely was going off. And everything we've heard from JSN is that he's taken that next step forward. Coach Carroll used to always say that the players take their biggest leap forward from year 1 to year 2. That is when you can expect them to really start to show you the player that they're going to become. So JSN this year looks like, on the outside looking in here, as you were warming up into training camp, he was looking like that player who was going to show you, this is why I was the first receiver taken off the board of that draft. This is why I was taken in the first round. This is why I'm the highest selected Seahawks receiver going back to, how long, who's the guy we'd have to go back to? Corn Robinson? I know I'm probably forgetting somebody, but you want to call the Percy Harvin trade factor in that pick. So let's not forget this guy as highly picked as he was. Let's not forget that he came on stronger as the year went along. Let's not forget the fact that 70% of his targets last year were either behind the line of scrimmage or within 9 yards of the line of scrimmage. So just not really utilized correctly necessarily last year was JSN. And so can he continue his OTA dominance? Can he take that next step forward this year? Can he have those snaps where he really starts to find his footing and role as an outside receiver at times? Or is he going to be just a slot-o-matic? That guy that can be just an instant first down for you and can also take the top off the defense in a rare way from within that slot, as at times he showed he was able to do last year for us. We'll see. But it'll be fun to monitor as this kid is really a nice talent, one that does get lost in the shuffle. And it's going to happen when you have all of these picks over the past couple of years, when you got the Russell Wilson Denver Bronco draft picks and you're picking high across the board. So many guys you're bringing in. And it gets easy to forget about some of these guys. Like Witherspoon, we had JSN too. Yeah, JSN too. But this is why this rebuild will go faster. This is why the Seahawks will get to a contending state sooner than later, because you have stacked the deck up here in almost kind of an artificial way versus what other teams would have had to have done, which is just pick right and spend their money true. You got a chance to kind of super amp yours up with that trade of Russell Wilson, and on top of which, of course, picking really well in the players it would seem that you took in on the back of that trade. I know this one wasn't that one because you had the Broncos pick that one. This was your native pick at that. But bottom line, JSM, I think he's going to be really good this year, and he was absolutely ripping and tearing up training camp this past year. That's my list. Health of Abe. Where's the defensive line? Who's playing where on the defensive line? Gino and Sam going back to the spread. Where's the health of the inside linebacking core and the depth of it in addition to that? Not just one, but also the other. How's the installation speed going to be on both sides of the ball? Are we going to be at 92% August 23rd on the defense? We'll be at 84% on the offense. Where Grubb's like, I just couldn't quite get it in all. Or will they get it all in real quick, real fast, the early part of training camp, and everything's really up, fully running by the start of the season? Be a big point of dictating of the success that they could have this next year if they can get it in quick and fast. How high will the intensity of camp be? No more just chilling, listening to the music, watching off of the water, just kind of going through camp. Is there going to be a little bit more of an edginess to this camp? A little bit more of a sense of urgency within how they go about their business? Be fun to watch. Laken Tomlinson, you got one more ride. Differences in scheme. Can these players onboard these differences? Can they pull that off? Is it going to hold them up? Is it going to restrict them? We've never been asked to do that before. That's going to make me a step slow to have to kind of think that through. Okay, I'll do that. Or is it, I got it, coach. I'm ready for this. And then the role of Boom Witherspoon. And if JSN can assert his dominance like he had in OTAs. I thank you for watching today. Do me a favor, if you could, for me, please. Hit, slam, destroy that like button. I would really appreciate it very, very, very much. If you could for me too, please get subbed on up, as we are looking to keep growing here at the Hawks Nest here going the season. We got some big time goals on that side of it. A couple of bits of news for everybody out there. We are me. By we, I mean me. I am the Hawks Nest coming to Seattle over this next week. So I will be at the practice on the 26th and the 27th, which is going to be at 1 p.m. on the 27th. That's going to be a Saturday. So after practice, I'm going to be heading down to we're going to go to a brewery. So I've got a few options here that I put in a poll here for the chat today. Chainline Brewing, Mac and Jackson Redmond, Savage Brewery in Kirkland, or we can do somewhere else if those options aren't going to fit. But I will be doing at 6 p.m. on the 27th, Saturday, meet and greet for anybody that wants to show up. I don't know, I know it's middle of summer, so people are probably out still bouncing around and doing that, but I wanted to try to get this fitted in while I was going to be up here for a couple days up in Seattle. We haven't done one of these before, so I figured it would be kind of fun to, kind of meet up with everybody, see if we got a couple people who want to come in, say hey. So feel free to join me out at location there. I'll let you guys know on the community post board, and I'm going to still be doing a Wednesday show before I get out there on Saturday, so we'll be letting you guys know as a final point of where we'll be. But I will be sure to tweet everything out when I go to the place we go and make sure we fully notify everybody on the last landing spot. Might even figure out today before the show's over with. So thank you for that. And if you want to join me out in training camp, 26th, 27th, I think there still are some tickets remaining on that. So you can join me out there, and we can meet out there too. So if you can't get out to the brewery, head out to practice. I'll meet you out up there either way you want to go. Got just a short week here before we start training camp, so we will be clicking into place. I know everyone's real busy here still this summer, but we are just about to lock this in. Also, thank you to Underdog Fantasy, sponsoring the show. Please utilize Underdog today. You can use my code, NEST, and they'll match you up to 100% of $100 of your first deposit. All you got to do is use my code, NEST. They've got some great preseason pick'em lines out there, and I'm going to be presenting some in mine that I've done and rolled on to give you guys some recommendations as we get a little bit closer on into training camp here. So thank you for that. Jeffrey A. Thistle, thank you for the $2 donation. I really, really appreciate it, man. He says, I have a chronic M's fan illness. It's bad. Yeah, indeed. I saw a tweet come up of a poor gentleman that I think has hit a spot that a lot of people have kind of gone to recently, where you just sort of are at your point of giving up hope a little bit. And let me show you here. This guy, I thought he had a real interesting deal on this. So Russell Hartness guy, poor guy, says, if at Mariners were playing, I'd be watching. Let me reread that. For 45 years straight, if the Mariners were playing, I'd be watching. Today, I'm not even turning on the game. I'd say this is doctor's orders, but it's more about sanity. Ownership simply won't support these guys, and it's beyond painful to watch. I'm out for today. I think a lot of Mariner fans find themselves in that place, Jeffrey, and I can't blame you for being in that spot. This was, of course, as you guys have been following me on this channel, I've got a Mariners channel, but I made my reasoning on that to you guys as to why I'm not going to be doing it, and it's for where you guys, I think, find yourselves at in a mentality state I was at coming into the season to kind of see it coming down the tracks, and that is that you have a team that's not interested in competing from an ownership's perspective. They're interested in stocking the shelves, making sure they got butts and seats. Yeah, they're interested in their 54% ways, but they're not interested in building a contender. And if you're going to build a contender, it doesn't happen accidentally. It doesn't happen because you've got lucky with every single one of your prospects. Prospects will only take you so far in every sport. And it's a place I did get to. I'm really frustrated with it. We've been going through 5 decades of this. It's gotten old. I don't understand how you own any professional sports team and then you come back telling fans who are loyal and supportive of you that you don't have the money to spend to build a true contender. That they do everything in their power to support you, but you won't do everything in your power. Yeah, you're going to get people turned off. And the Mariners, who've long been able to operate off that Pacific Northwest goodwill, because you're good people, we're good people, and we'll give people a long bit of rope on stuff, but you eventually get to the end of your rope and you cut the cord. And I hit my spot on that this year. Doesn't mean I'll be away from the team forever, but I'm not watching the team unless I know they're truly doing everything they can to compete. And they're not doing everything they can right now. So we'll see if they change their ways. We'll see if maybe they can get enough fans that are starting to get dissuaded by what they're seeing to go, okay, well, we got it. Okay, we'll do it. We got it. We finally hear you guys. Then do it. Isaac, thank you for the $12 donation. I appreciate you for that, Isaac. And very kind of you. Always, I know, donating just about every stream for me on that, Isaac. Thanks for that, man. He says, happy Geno number of weeks to week 1 versus Denver. That'd be 7 weeks. There we go. Week 1 versus Denver. To all my 12s, so stoked. I'm going to be there. Let's have it go, Hawks. That's going to be a hell of a game to go to, man. Isaac. You know the energy is going to be off the hook. The stadium's going to have a little bit of a sense of anticipation there with the new head coach for a first time in a very long period of time. You know the players are going to want to show out with the new coach and the way the season ended last year, and especially the way some people question some of what was going on with that team last year as far as its willingness to get in and get after it. But a great opponent too. It's the Denver Broncos. It's one of our old rivals from the AFC West. And that still does, even though it doesn't burn as hot as it once did. It does burn a little bit brightly, a little bit still. There's some coals. We got some embers left of that Denver hatred there. But great game for you to be able to go check out, man. That'd be an awesome one to go for opening game of the season on top of it all. So get in there and scream your lungs out, Isaac. Do that good 12s dirty work that we got to do. Get it done. But 7 weeks, a mere 7 weeks, folks. We're going to blink our eyes and it'll be opening day, I'm telling you. Like that. Like that, Isaac. Thank you, man. I appreciate you for the 12 though, brother. And let's effing go Hawks. Brian Myers, how you doing? Good to see you in the house. Space, hello. Ricardo, what's up? What's up? We got 2 Brians in the house. Brian E. 2 Brians. Hand grenade work. I'll be home later. Sounds good. Hand grenade. Brian, yes, I'm rather hoping we can run down a snapshot of who's on the injured list and why and what the prognosis is. I think I've got. Did I get the injured list here or something? I don't know if we've gotten all of the details yet on the injuries as far as the timeline goes. That would be my first thing with that, is that until we're actually able to get some of the press conferences with the coaches and whatnot, it's going to be hard to necessarily have a, give you an actual idea of. Let me find my deal here. Sorry, trying to move this thing so you guys can read this along with me. We're not going to be given anything as far as the details of it. So the Seahawks, with training camp beginning next week, the Seahawks placed 7 players on the physically unable to perform list, including right tackle Abraham Lucas, who had knee surgery following the end of season, and linebackers Jerome Baker and Tyrell Dodson. So in Jerome Baker and Tyrell Dodson, those guys aren't surprises. Those were 2 injuries they had dealt with throughout this offseason, and their timeline for being on the PUP is not surprising with that. So I'll guess on some of these with it. Lance Boykin, I'm unsure of what his PUP reason is. With Jarek Reed, it's that he's coming off the ACL, so they're going to play it slow with him. I think it's the same thing with Lucas. I think both these guys probably, if you asked them, could you practice right now, would tell you they could. But the team with these kind of injuries and surgeries they've dealt with is going to be very tentative and conservative in their approach with both of those 2 guys. With the inside linebacker, Drake Thomas, I have not heard what the issue is with him, nor Cameron Young. So dealing with some kind of injuries from the prior year. And then you've got the non-football injury list with guys that just have sustained something. Maybe they trained and something happened in training or something along those lines. And that was going to be Anthony Bradford, Easton Gibbs, DJ James, and Nehemiah Pritchett. So both Auburn cornerbacks. And receiver D. Williams. Now, with all those guys, it's kind of hard to say exactly what it could be. Again, too, within a week from now, not even a week from now, within about 5 days, Brian, we'll get the press conference from Mike McDonald. The reporters will ask him specifically on each player, and much like Carroll used to do, he'll give a little bit more of the true detail on each of them as to what's going on. But I don't think there's anything major on any of them. I'm not surprised with any of the ones that we've seen. Maybe Bradford was the one that you hadn't expected of, or the 2 rookie cornerbacks. But I thought Lucas might start on the PUP. The key on that one, again, is that at the PUP at any time you can pump them off and activate them. So they don't have to remain on Summit for some preset time. At any point in time, you can kind of move them off on that. Sorry, a little bit behind the chat, but we'll catch you up here. You know how I do. Jeffrey Thistle, how you doing? Thank you for that. Don't know. Bradford passes physical. Ready to roll, Brian? Okay. So maybe Bradford not long on that PUP, just to my point on that. Some of these guys might only be on there for a couple days. Daniel Barry, how you doing? Brian says, my daughter invited me for dinner, so I won't be here long. It's a good dinner. It's nice of your daughter to do that. It's a good daughter. Carlos says, too bad I don't live in Washington anymore. Looks like a fun outing. I think we'll have a good time. I wanted to do this for a while. It's the first time we've been able to do it in 5 years of the channel, so I figured, man, you're due after 5 years. We might only get a couple people in there, but that's all right. I don't mind. We'll have a hell of a time with those couple people. As long as we throw the middle of the field, I'll be happy. I guarantee you we'll throw a lot more than we did prior. Carl, I moved back to Puerto Rico. Want to be closer to family. Nice, dude. I hear it's freaking amazing there. Brian Meyer, so how does the offensive scheme change affect who might be our offensive line starters? Different blocking? I would have thought on the surface of it, Brian, that it would have been highly impacted changing to the new scheme. But it really doesn't the more you kind of look at it, to be honest with you. So with Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas, both of those 2 guys have air raid backgrounds going back to college. So do they fit to the scheme? Do they have the mobility for the scheme? 100%. No doubt about it. Olawatimi, though he didn't play in a pure spread scheme there at Michigan, has the ability to operate the spread concepts. Nick Harris has played in a spread scheme. He can operate the concepts. Christian Haynes didn't really play in a pure spread scheme. It was more of one of those kitschy college offenses where they're going to try to protect bad quarterback play. So it's a lot of quick throws and throws on the move, and everything's really like heavily manufactured for the quarterback and the offense. But he's got the mobility stuff too. Bradford, mobility stuff there. They kind of had already started to go to the guys that what you really want for this scheme, being guys that are great in pass protection and guys that can be mobile. I think those are two of the centerpiece points for a spread offense, Brian. And all of these guys have it, with the exception of Laken Tomlinson. Tomlinson was not a great tester coming out of college. He's never really been known as the best of movers in space. So there's some worry there as far as how that'll work. He's got the veteran-y sort of presence thing that he brings that it seems to be worth quite a bit. And I might seem like I'm mocking it, but I know I get it. It's worth something. That steady hand that can kind of guide the youngsters along the rest of the line. But he's really the only guy, Brian. Everybody else is a fit to what this scheme requires of them. They can pull out in front. They can climb to the second level. They pass protect like crazy. So it's part of the reasons this offense works so well, and bringing in a guy like Grubb is that you even more so than where the defense is kind of at, quite frankly, is that there was really less of a need to change out the personnel to fit to Grubb's offense, because you already had the guys in place who fit it, including the offensive line. What's up, Addicted? Good to see you in the house, man. War Chief, aloha, Brandon. What's up, War Chief? It's good to see you, brother. The Real Cheese, thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate you for that. Real Cheese, good to see you in the house too, brother. When do we start wearing paper bags and chanting "sell the team"? Mariners made me lose interest ages ago, but it's gotten worse. Well, I'm willing to start to do it on my Mariners channel. If somebody wants me to start going, I'll be that guy. I'll fall on that sword for you, okay, guys? I got the Hawks channel I can fall back on, so I can fall on the sword of the Mariners channel. If you guys need me to go be the toxic guy over there on the Mariners side of it, I'll go be that guy for y'all. That's that loyalty factor I was talking about, Real Cheese, where, you like you said, interest ages ago, I walked into the season, I said, okay, I'm out. I think that they have finally reached that point. They finally reached that line. If this was the Mariner fan thermometer, they have reached the part like the cartoons and Looney Tunes where, remember when the thermometer fills up, it turns red, and then it starts steaming, and then it breaks the glass off the top of the thermometer, and it's steaming through the glass at the top. Mariner fandom's getting to about that spot. They've pressed this as far as they can possibly take this thing from a PR perspective to kind of glide by on this. And they're going to start to push it into a place, in my opinion, Real Cheese, where now people are going to start to show up less. Now you're going to start to feel people checking out in the actual ticket sales. And that's the only thing that's going to, of course, motivate them at this point. But from an owner's perspective and their standpoint on this, we have an owner whose biggest, most important thing in life is making money. I understand this is what's made them a billionaire or what's made them as rich as they are, and I get that. And I'm not saying it is either a negative or a positive fact. I'm saying it simply of your Mariner ownership cares only about money and making sure they're making their yearly profit within that. They're going to make a gazillion dollars in profit when they eventually sell the team, but they want their constant, consistent yearly profit margin that they have arbitrarily chosen to be at this certain set amount. They had no foresight when it came to their television contracts or what they were doing with that. And then when they had no foresight with it, they then came back to the Mariner fandom and said, well, this just got taken off our thing now. We don't know what to do. We don't know. And so a guy like that, the only way that this is going to work is even more than paper bags and selling the team is people got to stop showing up into the stadium. And I don't want to ever tell people not to show up for the team or to show the support. But at the same point in time, this is 5 decades. This isn't me being an impatient fan who's been like, it's been 4 years and it's not going fast enough. No, I've been on this train for 5 decades. You haven't sniffed the World Series, much less won it. And worse than that, so many of the years going through this organization's history, you can track, trace, and positively identify what it is that's caused the team to go to hell. And it's the same damn thing. And it gets old. And you get local media and you get the ownership trying to sell you some story every year that's BS. They know it's BS. We know it's BS. And they got no reason to operate from that standpoint of things. We support this team. We have loved this team. We have built 2 stadiums in the 50 years for this team. When does the love start reversing back? We'll see. But that's the only thing that's going to cause it for a guy that worships the almighty dollar as the end all be all real cheese. Is that's your only thing that'll stop it. Hit him in the pocketbook. And even then, how much does he have to be hitting the pocketbook at that point, considering how far he's lowered the salary down to this team? How cheap he's run the payroll. One of those guys like getting by on his overhead being white bread and American cheese. You know? Like, well, my overhead's low. Don't show up. All I need is like 500,000 of you a year. I'll be fine with that. And I still keep my yearly profit for the eventual sale of the team. I feel like it's on, I've gotten so jaded to think it's just, that's their outlook on it, where none of it comes down to really truly being competitive or, wait, don't you have enough money? No? I want another 100 million. That's what makes me live at night. Makes me live at night to know I get another 100 million in my pocket. You know what it's like when they say you got 100 million in your bank account? Yes, but you have a community of fans that are enraged and angry at you. I don't give a shit. I got 100 million in my pocket. Roxanne, thank you for the $5 donation, Roxanne. Also great to see you in the house tonight as well. Says George Holani, punt returner. Well, it's interesting you brought that up. I was thinking about this a little bit. And I was thinking about this, Roxanne, because when I currently go to the depth chart for your Seahawks, and we take a little bit of a peek here at our current, now this is the ESPN, of course, but if we take a look at our current punt returner, do you guys see the PR punt returner there is here on my little overhead and deal here? That's Jake Bobo. They got listed as your punt returner right now on ESPN, which makes me very much laugh. Not that I'm against it. I'm not one to question Bobo. You want to make Bobo a safety at this point, I'll stand up and applaud. I'm not going to question that kid. He does it all. But I don't know if the 6'4" Bobo is going to be quite the right guy for the punt return duties there, Roxanne. So I did look into this a little bit, and I actually think it's going to be a pretty straightforward guy as to who's going to get the job when it's all said and done on this one. There's 2 names I'll give you, but there's the guy I feel very strongly about on this, Roxanne, who's going to win that, and that's going to be Laviska Shenault. Chenault's got background in punt returning the past 2 years there with Carolina. Didn't do it initially with Jacksonville. They didn't put him into that role very often, but with last year, he was asked to do it with Carolina a few times, a good amount of times. I think he becomes the guy to do it. Doesn't have a fumble on his record as a punt returner at that point doing it. The only other guy that could maybe slide in there too is Kenny McIntosh as your second guy that could maybe go and take those duties away. But I think that it's probably going to be the other on this one. I just think that this is part of the reason why Roxanne, because it was very odd at the time with Laviska Shenault, you guaranteed his full season of his contract. You didn't pay him a lot of money, but you guaranteed this full season of his contract on your books. Meaning you had a role isolated out for him somehow or another. Kick returner, punt returner, sometime fly sweep guy. We'll see which role it fits into on that, Roxanne, but I would suspect that guarantee pushes me at times to think in ways of looking at him of, okay, you're not just doing that for the kick return. It's the kick return. You're going to have him do the punt return stuff. Part of the reason you guaranteed it, Roxanne, I think from their perspective of it is the punt return duties have been kind of bad over the last few years. Not bad, but no, they've been bad. They've been bad over the last few years. A lot of fumbles, a lot of guys not comfortable back there receiving it, a lot of guys who can't do anything as far as any impact when they're back there returning it. I think he put this kind of $1 million aside here for Laviska to say, okay, I'll get my kick returner and I'll take care of the punt return duties, and I'll have somebody back there who's legitimately doing it. We're not going to get by with a running back who's doing it for the first time in his life and trying to learn on the fly at the NFL level, which is never a good thing. Let's have a real true guy who's comfortable doing it. So I think it's that. Now, when it comes to George Holani, he's got the skill set and ability to do it. I don't think, though, that he did any punt returning. I don't think he did any punt returning at Boise State. Let me double check this, but I want to say I looked this up the other day. You don't trust the older memory, you know. Sometimes you got to go back in the older memory and make sure you're right about it. But I want to say he didn't really do any punt returns. So he's got 12 total punt returns over the course of his career at Boise State. And only 1 kickoff return. So didn't really do it. It doesn't mean he can't do it here now. I mean, he will be probably on the active roster, I think, as your 4th running back, and that certainly puts him as a candidate to be that guy. But I think even McIntosh had more punt returns with Georgia going back than Holani did. So probably not George on that one, Roxanne. Thank you, though, for the donation. Real cheese, Isaac, Jeffrey, appreciate y'all. Very kind of you. Orchie says NCAA 25 this weekend on Heisman mode, but I'm going to get my Huskies that national championship last and laughing out loud. I'm just graduating up to Heisman mode. So I want to get myself reacclimated on the game, get some of the details down, and then get it flipped over to Heisman mode. But I'm just about to flip to Heisman mode myself. I'm having fun with the game, though. It's good. They did a good job. A little more time and effort put into this one than your typical Madden game. Regardless, I fully expect Abe to miss part of the season. Fant is a good right tackle, though. We'll be fine. It is more important to give Abe all the time he needs for his knee to be 100%. Well said. And I certainly don't want him out there if it's not at 100%. To your point, Ricardo. Especially if the doctors were telling me that giving it more time could help it out. Big Docs, Brandon, come on. Don't put the jinx on my plans to buy a Radigan throwback jersey. you maybe need to buy that. He may be your starter day one at this rate. Regardless, I don't know if this is naive, but I think Dodson and Baker are coming back soon. I find it hard to believe that we are handing out one-year contracts just for players to go on the PUP list. Yes, they are due to come back. Both of them are, I believe that, I remember the initial report being that the timeline was that they were both back at the latest by like the 7th of August. But that would be like the latest, I think. Jefferson says, thank God we didn't hire Dan Quinn. I would have had all the same worries we had with Pete. Dan is just a crappier version of Pete. Yeah, I'm not a big, I did not want to go with the Dan Quinn option either. If you're going to change and you make a change, then make a change. Don't lateral change. Don't make a change just for the sake of making an appearance of looking like it's a change, you know. Truly drive to do something different if that's what the intention is. And that's what they did. Every says, imagine a football player who can tackle. Can you imagine what that looks like? Roxanne, I would buy a Radigan Army Black Knights jersey. That'd be a good jersey. Black jerseys are always good, though. You can't mess with the black jersey. Yeah, we're finally doing inter-squad games, hand grenade. And I think it'll help. Rick says, why the east side? So much traffic on the east side, and besides, that's where all the rich snobs live. Well, it's a good question there, Rick. I'm going to be at training camp that day, and so I don't really, I'm going to have a hard, I kind of want to choose down to the south if I can, kind of Kirkland, to go already down kind of 20, 25 minutes from where I'm at. So I'm trying to choose a place that's still somewhat close to proximity where I'll be staying. And with practice ending and all that, trying to get over to Seattle, probably wouldn't be over there until like 7 or 8, and then trying to get everybody, coordinated down in that area. It's one of those things where you kind of pick everywhere, Rick, and there's going to be a spot that somebody's going to hate wherever you pick on it. So I kind of accepted that, tried to pick the most centralized kind of areas I could on it, and you do with what you can on that. Addicted says, Brandon, aren't the words miserable and the Jets in the same sentence being redundant? Well, you can't spell miserable without Jets. Little known fact. But yeah, I would say so. For fans. Well, at least they get to say we got the Super Bowl trophy. It's one of those fan bases that never seem to get close to a Super Bowl, but they could at least say, well, we got 72. We got Namath. Ricardo says we should have signed a better left guard. Done same cap trickery to afford it. Laken Tomlinson's going to lead to another 9-8 season. Definitely wasn't a super high signing for me either on this. I'm hopeful that he's got that one more run, that last ride. I do desperately hope he can pull that off, but I will admit that, there's a part of me looking at the deal that goes, well, I don't know on this one. And with me, Ricardo, I wanted this offseason to make a big centerpiece of what they did from an upgrading a personnel standpoint to make it that offensive line, make it a point of emphasis. And they did add some talent. They did do a pretty good job of increasing the overall, I think, upside to the offensive line this year versus recent years. It still remains one that's not come as far as you would have liked. And I'm in that same boat of it. Still would have liked a bit stronger of a push to turn this thing into a little bit more of a strength. John's kind of slow rolling a little bit on that. Not in a bad way, but he's doing the kind of take your time, take a few years to get it right rather than trying to supercharge it. Dixie says, but seriously, I think Tomlinson will last the year. I will say he's durable. That's the one thing you can say about him is he will go out there and play every game. May not be the highest level of play, but he will play it. Carson Schneider has this weird allergy to good offensive lines. It's kind of insane. It's wild, Ricardo, especially considering when Russ walked in the door in 2012, you had the highest paid offensive line in the sport. Come very far from those days. And it's especially strange, too, when looking at the Packers, which seems to be in a lot of times a bit of a model for the way he runs the organization, who spend so much of their assets from a draft capital standpoint and spend money on the little bit of money that they do have to spend. They're always making sure that they're taking care of their offensive line. It's very rare that you have the Packers have a year where you go, boy, that offensive line's bad this year from the Packers. They always make sure it's a particular strength of the team. Big part of what's helped Jordan Love in his development is having the stability there at that offensive line. It is insane, though. Swedish Shinobi says, you tell him, Pumpkin. I know, she was super talkative there early on. King Bomber, what's up? King Bomber says, not a fan of Laken Tomlinson on the roster, but I don't think we had a choice. Yeah, I think that they had to make the best of a bad situation. I certainly think I would have loved to have seen Schneider go find a left guard out there that was a true upgrade in free agency, but was there one really available? Look at Damian Lewis was one of your highest paid left guards out on the market. Was there going to be a guy that was available and fit to the mobile scheme that you run here? And maybe not, maybe not, especially with where the prices were going for guards this offseason where they cracked that $20 million figure of things. I do think, though, if John does get an opportunity in the next couple of years to one of these positions on this line that he's had a hard time to kind of get fully addressed, and there is a guy that becomes available in free agency, it's not the worst of ways necessarily, I think, to spend money. Ryan Meyer says Bradford played both sides in college, not the hardest transition. He might have. He only had about 17 starts in total there, so I don't know if he played a lot of the left guard. The thing with him, too, is that with Bradford, the big issue becomes not moving people or moving in space. It becomes him in pass protection and holding up there. And when you go from him blocking nose tackles to the 3-techs, that's where the challenge for him to hold up in pass protection is going to be raised heavily so. And he's going to be really challenged over there, I think, to stay in front of those guys. Could be wrong on it, but be my impression with Bradford a little bit. Brian, thank you for reminding me. Please do hit that like button for me, folks. We are trying to get to 20,000 subs too right now, so if you could sub on up to the channel, I would really appreciate it. Swedish is Giants suck, but you can count on them making at least a Super Bowl run once a decade. They do indeed in that part of it, yeah. I don't know. It's been a while since they've been to one, though. So once Coughlin left, those days might be over there for them. The weird thing was them, they've made two really outstanding hires there at the head coaching position, being Bill Parcells and Coughlin, and a lot of misses on the head coaches around them. Brian says, time to grill and follow the chat. Getting harder. Let's go. She loves summer. Regardless, as I was going to say, Bradford sucks at pass pro, but then so does Tomlinson. That's true. It's a bit of both. What's up? Kitty. Sentai Ranger Donnie, how you doing, man? Jeffrey says Spoon gets hurt. We're effed. It's going to get tight. Get a little tight. Definitely a big part of this defense rides on him running right, rolling right. If I can say that right. Yeah. Joseph says, I like they said Reek will travel with the top wide receiver. Yeah, it's cool. I think there's a little bit of too within that them telling you that, Joseph's a bit of an indicator. Like I've wondered of, are they going to, are we looking at more man coverage this year from Tariq Woolen? Because if you're typically going to have a man travel with a guy like that, right? The point of having him travel is to stay in man coverage. The point of him is not to have him travel to drop into zone. You'll do that a little bit. Don't get me wrong. You're not just running pure man 24/7. But I do wonder if that doesn't mean maybe that, you're, if you're not going to then maybe run a little bit more of the man coverage. And of course, there's this stat that I presented, which I think that McDonald's going to be looking at, and how could you not? Which is that Tariq Woolen was your highest graded man cover corner in all of football last year. You didn't ask him to do it a majority of his snaps because Coach Carroll plays to a high majority of his, I'm not talking high majority, I'm talking like insanely high majority of the snaps are going to be in zone. And that even there were times where you were having him run man last year was probably a lot of those were like man match situations where he's starting out in zone, but he can transition to man if he route reads it right and can jump on up. So if he is traveling, I think that is definitely an indicator that they are probably going to be running a lot of man coverage on the outside in tandem with that. Doesn't mean man coverage across the board, but just man coverage at least with the outside corners in tandem with that. And you're loud today. What's going on? I know. There's just, I hope the whole defense isn't dependent on Spoon. It concerns me the way people talk about him and the defense. Dude gets hurt, we're done. I think that we're actually in an okay spot to where I don't think we're done if Spoon gets hurt here, Jeffrey. First, we've got backup slot guys there that we haven't had in recent years that are a little more legitimate than we've had. I mean, Kobe Bryant's going into year, 3 now? He can play some of that role. You drafted in DJ James, a guy who should fit really well to the slot if you need him to go in there and play a good amount. You even have Artie Burns on the roster right now. I think that in Spoon, more than I look at him, Jeffrey, as a guy that's, well, if this guy goes down, our defense is sunk. I look at it as more of to capture the top end of your defense this year to the utmost. He needs to be out there on the football field. But this defense is not going to be one that necessarily is reliant on its stars to drive it. That's the great benefit, I think, that you have in a Mike Macdonald. He needs good players on his defense to make it work. Yeah, sure he does. Absolutely. But the scheme also makes it work. And the players that defensive line, if Spoon goes down, you still have the defensive line that you have in place. You still have a pretty good secondary out around that can get by on that. You're still going to have the creative scheme that he can employ. It would remove down your upside. It will remove down the potential of you grinding your way into maybe being eventually at some point a top 10 type defense. But I don't know if it would sink your whole season necessarily, especially understanding too, Jeffrey, that the offense is going to be so much of what carries this team this year. As much as the defense just needs to kind of hold the water, hold up its end of the bargain, not be the worst in the league when it comes to stopping the run or living on the football field. Some of those little finer details that have been so problematic in recent years. Sweetest Mommy, did I just witness a live birth? Hitter is incredible. Big Docs, how long until the first preseason games or the Titan scrimmage? I believe that we've got the first preseason game on the 10th, and the scrimmage is in early August, I think. I don't know I forget the exact timeline on that one. Brian Myers, Brandon, is running back room something to give some attention in the more formal spread concept? Is the running back room something to give some attention in the more formal spread concept? You might have to rephrase that, Brian. I'm not sure what you mean by the question on that. Is running back room something to give some attention in the... You mean like, do we need more... I guess, Brian, if you can elaborate a little bit more on that question. I don't know if you're asking if we need more running back help in there that fits more to the spread system, or if this means, if you're asking, do running backs get more attention? Do they get more usage essentially with the spread formation? Ricardo says, I saw Lumea's film. He's pretty rough, but I don't think he's more than a backup year one. I would agree with that, Ricardo. Especially because he's basically transitioning into guard. He's played guard a little bit beforehand already, but he's going back in there and you go, okay, transition change, rookie year. Probably going to need at least a year to figure out what we got in him. And he was at the end of the day a 6th round pick. So, those are also kind of flyer guys at that point, flip a coin whether or not they can become something. Jeffers says, let's play. How many Seahawks players does it take to tackle a running back? 4 and 1 watches. Brian and Zanes will most likely be the only rookie offensive lineman to make the 53. Others on the practice squad. Yeah, that's probably the way it plays out. You've got Bradford, Haynes, Tomlinson. Yeah, I mean, it could be that way. I think Lamea might be your 4th guard on the team. It's going to be between him and McClendon Curtis, I think, for the 4th guard spot. But you're going to hold at least 4. I don't think you'll hold 5, but at least 4. It's hard to watch the Mariners even when they win. Stressful, man. I went through it last year. Especially feel bad for the pitchers because they go out there and they pitch a whale of a game and they just put their heart on the line and they get no support. It's brutal. Dig the Hawks is warning dark sense of humor upcoming. Who gets hit with the beast mode curse this year? Grr, I shouldn't even joke about this. The main candidate this year would probably be Walker's heading to a contract. Charbonnet is probably your guy the guy that's got to maybe take one for the team this year on that front. Addicted. He's got to take on the curse full on. .360 Bet says, I still voted on the poll even though I can't come. Is that allowed? Of course. Yeah, I don't know the area as well, so you guys can guide me on the right track of where we need to go here. I'm trying to guess. It's been a long time since I've been there. Ricardo says, what's the beast mode curse? I often reference the beast mode curse. It's kind of in a joke. With me, Ricardo, sometimes stuff's half serious. It's sort of a joking thing. It's partly born out of frustration. I call it the beast mode curse because when Marshawn Lynch was here, he was fantastically durable. I think in the last year he was here, he had the whole abdominal tear thing go down, and that was the one time where he started to lose a couple of games where he couldn't play. But absent that, you could count on him every week to be out there. And the second he moved on, and we transitioned through all these other running backs, nobody could stay healthy. We'd have good running backs like Thomas Rawls and Chris Carson. They could give you a majority of the season where they're really good, but eventually they were going to get tripped up by the beast mode curse. You were not going to have your starting running back last all the way through the year, and it was just going to roll. And for years there, whoever we brought in, whoever we developed, whoever we drafted, it didn't matter. It didn't matter if it was Eddie Lacy or Kristen Michael or whoever else. You just couldn't keep him healthy, to the point we had multiple years there, Ricardo, where we had to sign guys off the streets mid-year because we'd run out of running backs. And so I just sort of termed it a couple of years ago the beast mode curse, because, yeah, he didn't curse us. It's just, I just label it that because he was the last one to stay upright. Brian says grilling's getting more intense. Back later. Sounds good, Brian. Don't you burn that beef. Don't you burn that beef. Carlos says, now that I think about it, Rawls, Carson, Michael, Procise. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It eventually seems like we've been cursed by a New Orleans witch. That somebody got some voodoo doll out, or a collection of voodoo dolls out, or get a yearly voodoo doll out. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know the details of it. But something doesn't smell right. I smell incense and sacrifice. So he says, gotta go. Dad to the hospital. Taking Dad to the hospital. I hope your dad's okay, Swedish. Have a good one, man. John Thompson says Jackson Smith to Ninja. That Space is, what's Christopher Walken's opinion on Bobo? Bobo? You want to know about Bobo? I'll tell you. Jake, Bobo, legendary man. He's great. Don't you count out no Bobo. I need him now. Like ever. He's going to come to training camp, win the job. Watch, Seahawk fans. Look. He's about to take him out now. Bobo, number one wide receiver. We don't need to sign DK Metcalf because we've got a number one already. Well, Rasta, he's here now. His name is Bobo. Big Docs, Brandon Like Space said, a Walken opinion on the Mariners is needed. Better yet, a video clip of Pumpkin looking upset and voice of Walken taking shots at the Mariners. That might be a good video to do. I can tell you, Christopher's not, he's a bigger baseball fan than a football fan. I'm mad right now. I'm going to tell you something about these Mariners. They suck. No one can hit. I can hit better than these Mariners. Curveball, spinny spin, where it go? I don't know, but let me swing at it. Why? Would it kill you to take a walk? Stop swinging from the back of your heels. Now, please. Duran Everest in the house. What's up, Duran? How you doing? Duran says, remember 2015 when Cam Newton started the dab craze? I do remember that. It swept the nation for a year and a half. Everybody dabbed all the time. Joseph says, I'd like to see McIntosh return punts. I can't help but hope John Radigan can step his game up. It's the Radigan hour, man. Let's go, Johnny Rags. I call him Johnny Rags. That's his nickname for me. McIntosh, I think he's your number 2 punt returner behind Laviska. And McIntosh has got to be chomping at the bit after missing all of last season, Joseph, to get in there and actually make some impact this season. He has the ability to be the ideal type of punt returner. Short area burst, change of direction, every move in the book from dead legs to jukes to spin moves. So he's got every manner to get out of those tackles that sometimes happen in short spaces there as you're a punt returner. Just got to see if he can take the job over from Laviska. Jag Sports Talk with Jose Rodriguez, one of our longtime moderators here on the chat. If you can, folks, please do get subbed up to Jag Sports Talk with Jose. Be very kind if you do so. Says, B, I know the pads haven't come on yet, but do you see my guy Kobe Bryant making the team? I think it's the thing that hurt him is the thing that now suddenly kind of helps him here, Jose. And let me explain. I think he was hurt in his pro career initially by being asked to transition away from being an outside corner to then being a slot corner in his first year, to then being moved to safety in his second year. I don't think he was being handed any favors by the coaching staff to be asked to do that. But now it starts to work in his favor because now he has a coach come in the door who, even more so than Coach Carroll, values versatility and a skill set in a player that's able to do a variety of different things. So now why I say it works in his favor is I think it's going to come right down to the line between a guy like Kobe Bryant and Jonathan Sutherland, or whoever may be that final safety on the roster, or Jarek Reed, whoever it's between him and that final guy. And the differentiating point between those two will be Kobe Bryant's ability to play a couple of other positions. And that'll be just enough to kind of get him over the finish line by the nose, in my opinion, Jose. So I think it works back in his favor, but I still do maintain at the root and the heart of this with Kobe, I come back to his best position's not safety. His best position's really not slot. His best position probably is his outside corner. But it will be interesting to see what the intent will be behind McDonald and how he sees the best way to use this kid. Cost him at first, Jose. Now it'll actually kind of benefit him a little bit. Because now Mike will look at him, Jose, and go, okay, it's a guy who's our fourth safety, but I can throw that fourth safety on the football field if we get low on the numbers, and I can ask him to start out as a single high and end up down in the slot and play the slot man on man. I can ask him to start out as a single high safety and end up as an outside corner on the Z post snap. That allows him to win out the job, I think, over the top of the other corners or the other safeties he'll be battling with in that spot. We can't remember, Jose, he's got the Peanut Tillman punch too. He's got that as well. You know Michael like that. Addicted Hawks. Brandon, can you imagine 1972 Jets version of Hard Knocks with Namath's lifestyle? Now that would be a much-watched TV. Hee hee. Fighting here to say some inappropriate stuff here about Joe's time at that point, you know. Joe, you got to get to practice. I'm banging Faye Dunaway here. Yeah. I'll be to practice later. I can't do Joe Namath's accent. He's got a heavy one. That's a heavy accent. But no, there'd be some, I imagine, kind of surprised we haven't had more stories from Namath's time with wild as crazy as that guy was, because he was one of those guys who was a guy who was in the biggest sports market, a big star in the biggest sports market in the country, and took full advantage of that. You know, and living it up in the way that a person who doesn't even like football, like if I just became the best football player in the da-da-da, I'd be out here doing this and I'd be out here doing that and I'd be running the town and I'd be da-da-da. And that's what Joe did. You know, he did what you'd almost have like the imagination of a person, you know, they tell you they would do with it. But yeah, Namath was a colorful one. You can almost say his off the field stuff as much as anything helped to drive him on into the Hall of Fame as much as anything. Certainly can't fall back on the stats with that guy. Duran says it's going to be sweet if we can lock up the Rams wide receivers this year. Mike Mack's going to coach our boys up real good. Hopefully we can, Duran. I'm with you. I do too as well. They're going to be a tough matchup. Puka was a handful for us last year in both matchups. We had our share of issues with them, and Cooper Kupp is still a guy that can play and play at a very high level. Kind of around them, they're not as strong from a receiver standpoint, I think. But those two guys can be issues in themselves, and they have doubled back down to the tight end. So, you know, bringing in Parkinson, they're going to lean on a lot of the two tight end sets, and a big part of what might be more the change that you see this year, Duran, that we haven't engaged with the Rams in recent years, is that, yeah, the receivers are guys that we're going to have to deal with and stop and lock up, like you say, but I'm kind of anticipating the Rams are going to be very run heavy this year. They may end up running the ball more than they pass the ball, or being a lot more closer to 50-50 than they have ever been with Sean McVay on the run-pass split. And so it may come down to some of the big important part with playing this particular Rams team this year. How do you defend the run? Can you stop the run? Because they put a big wall of massive bodies up in front of you, you know, like 1,000 pounds between their three interior offensive linemen, and they're just going to try to blow guys off the line. Jo, good to see you. Up, Jayo. Duran says our defensive line is going to be nasty. We have so many talented dudes on that line that we'll be able to have a great lineup even when guys go out to get a breather. Depth, strength at the top, you got them both. And this is a team on the defensive line, a little bit like the offensive line in recent years, where you can say they're both missing the top end talent that you need there to be good, and then they're missing the depth to sustain. And you have, in this last 3-year period, it started with Charles Cross. That was your beginning point, basically, here. And you took Charles Cross in the first, and you went back and you got Lucas in the 3rd round, and 5th round pick Oluwatimi. And then you came back to Bradford last year and grabbed him, or last year was Bradford and Oluwatimi, sorry. And again this year to Haynes and Luamea. And you've slowly started to build that thing up, much in the same way that they've done with the defensive line. And with the defensive line, you do have those guys at the top that can make it roll, who are impactful. Williams can be impactful. Draymond Jones can be impactful. Murphy looks like he can be impactful. But then you don't have to lean on him like we did last year, where you're leaning on guys for too many snaps. And you can fully roll that defensive line unit through. And this is the part that I think it gets forgotten about by fans more than anything when they look at defensive lines, Duran, is they look at the front line guys and they go, do we got badasses on the front? And if we got badasses on the front, we'll get by on the back end. And it's not that way. It's, badasses on the front, and you need able-bodied guys behind them so that they can give them those rotations, so they can keep them fresh throughout the game, so they can sustain if they happen to find themselves through the first 2.5 quarters, having their defense having to spend a lot of time on the field by the snap counts they have to run. Having that depth you can call upon to keep them fresh through the course of that game, to have a chance to get back in that game, is huge. And we've got both parts now. It's not about now the level of talent, which was a question a couple of years ago. When you're trotting out through the majority of the snaps, Al Woods, Quentin Jefferson, and Poona Ford on the interior of those 3 defensive linemen, you knew that wasn't going to be good enough going in, both on the front and the depth. But that talent's there now. Now it's just about the implementation and how you use them, how you flow that rotation. Sean Thompson says, vote for Brandon and Pumpkin ticket 2024. I'll run. Pumpkin will be a hell of vice president. Look at that cute face. Who's not voting for that cute face right there? He's even snoring a little bit right now. Miguel Z, what's up, man? Thanks for the content. My pleasure, Miguel. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys for that. Yeah, I know. I think Doc's wife just made Chinese dumplings. Excuse me while I pig out. Yeah, he says, so if Tariq is traveling, is he going with Puka or Kupp when we play the Rams? That one might be a little bit different, Jose, because I don't know if he's going to be traveling as much actively against the opponents that have their guys working out of the inside in the slot. So as Tariq's at 6'4", you really don't want him being pushed into the slot with two-way go routes a lot of the time. And when you typically have a guy following a corner, so when Darrelle Revis followed Randy Moss, and he's going to follow him all over the field, not only are they playing, Jose, those man concepts I was talking about, but Randy very rarely in those snaps is going to end up in the slot. And there's a lot of receivers in this league still who tend to just typically stay on the outside, and that's where they're going to be, and that's what you can count on them to do. So I don't know if against that particular opponent, being both Puka and Kupp, do their best work to the inside. I don't know if there'd be as much of a drive to follow in that matchup. I think the type of matchup that we'd be looking at for them to follow would be, let me think of a team here that would stand out. Jamar Chase at the Bengals, CeeDee Lamb with the Cowboys. Like your Stephon Diggs types, your Devontae Adams types, Garrett Wilson types, Jose. Those guys that are true outside guys, that would be what you'd have him locking in on. But if you have guys that are more, what they do is play slot more often than not, Justin Jefferson, Amon St. Brown, well, you've kind of got the slot guy that can roll with those guys on the inside. So there's not as much going to be a draw for those kind of matchups to have Tariq follow. I think it will be, as with a lot of Mike McDonald's defense, Jose, it will be opponent-based. the decision making on when to travel, how much to travel, and who to travel with. And I think the Rams won for those slot guys. It'll be more of him than aligned out wide on those particular type of matchups, because the team's going to be able to trust their interior guys to hold up against those guys. More so than recent years past, even Jose, because you're not going to be running as much of that deep zones and leaving the open inside routes wide open for him to just take advantage of all day. Cameron Robinson says, keep pushing positive, B. Always loving your content videos. Like and subscribe, people. 100% Hawks Nest for life. Let's go, Cameron. Thank you, man. Up finger. It is. And I don't know if Earl was in enough standing at that point to drop the curse, because, of course, curses can't be dropped from selfish reasons. Like Babe Ruth dropped the curse on Boston. It was for trading him. That's why the Bambino did that curse. You traded me. You gave up the goods on me. And with Earl, we weren't giving up the goods on you. We didn't trade you, Earl. You played out the full totality of your contract. It made you one of the highest paid safeties in the league when you signed it. So he just can't bring the curse energy with that. Whereas with Marshawn, it was just more of that's a whole different parameter too, because that's just Marshawn had created such a point of strength and consistency there at the position. His presence lost was just too heavy. It was just too great. Space, 3 cheers to you, man. We're having a good night, Space. Space, are you going to take some video of camp? If they don't take our cell phones away, I got to find out confirmation-wise if they actually take the cellies away or not. But if not, then I will absolutely be shooting video for you guys. And the hope is to do maybe a couple of quick little live streams. Brandon reporting in from camp. If I can pull that off on one of the 2 nights as well. So I'm going to try to do that if I can. I'd like to. Holy Stand Grenade, I remember Eddie Lacy. He was called Feast Mode. That's right. That's right. Feast Mode, baby. He liked to eat. He liked himself some food. Yeah, I don't think they allow you to do the video, though, Space. I'll try to do something even if I'm just outside at camp and maybe out in front of the building or something and BS a little bit. But I don't think that they let you get too much into stuff. They're trying to protect the scheme. Understandable. Totally understandable. Let's see where the vote's at here. Let us see where we are at. So it looks like somewhere else is the answer. Mac and Jacks or somewhere else. Okay. Guys making it easy on me. All right, well, if we've got somewhere else is the answer, let's get a couple of items in that maybe because again, I'm, there's only kind of so much I can kind of do on looking for a location as far as from afar, because I just don't know the area, and there's been about 1 million different breweries and places that have opened and closed since I've been there 13 years ago. So, no, I'll keep Mac and Jacks as an open option. If we want to do somewhere else, though, I do need some suggestions on somewhere else, because I tried to Google search this last night and I had very little luck in locating something that I thought would be the best spot. Diamond Knot and Mukilteo. The thing is that I got to get all the way up there from Renton after I get out of practice to get all the way down there and then get my happy ass back all the way up. I don't know if I really want to go down like an hour drive, get down to Mukilteo after I finish up practice to do that. I don't know if that sounds, Mukilteo might be a little bit further than I'm looking to go. I like Mukilteo and Diamond Knot's awesome, but I don't know if I want to go down an hour. I'm probably going to want to keep it close. Hand Grenade, I heard rumors Rams are going to be a run-heavy team now that they don't have Aaron anymore. Yes. I don't know if it has anything to do with Aaron Donald as much, Hand Grenade. They're going to be more run-heavy, but it's just because they're they've made this as a tactical change that they're trying to implement. And it's more of, they've, I think, seen an opportunity to take advantage of the fact the NFL is not run heavy right now. They got to be one of those teams zigging when everyone else is zagging. And in being able to then do that, you can, have a little bit of a market opportunity. And so they've built up their offensive linemen. They built up a lot of big guys that are going to just try to move some of those smaller defenses off the ball, some of those smaller defensive lines off the ball. I think that they're going to come downhill at you a lot, and it's going to be just a lot of A and B gap runs, a lot of kind of old Seahawk run type stuff that they utilize in what they do. They'll still have their passing concepts and outside zones and fly sweeps, but a lot of what you're going to see them do is just bang, 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 coming downhill. And this will be the weird change for McVay this year that I think will throw some people off. But this is what this is part of what makes McVay such a good coach, is he's not resting on laurels or sitting on what he's done prior and saying that this is the way I'm going to drive to my success in the future. He's saying, how do I have to continue to evolve? How do I have to continue to adapt and change to stay ahead of the game? Silas McDonald, how you doing? I'm doing great myself, man. Thank you for asking. Hand grenade, go all Mission Impossible be on the videotaping. I'll have a little hole in my shirt. Are you taping, sir? Yes. Yeah, no filming allowed. John Thompson, there's literally a million things to watch or listen to, and yet this is a show that I just can't miss. Let's go, Sean. I love hearing that, man. I really appreciate that as well. I aim to have that hopefully be a goal to entertaining in that way, that it provides that, I don't know, maybe don't always hit that mark, but definitely seeking to hit that mark. So thank you, man. I'm getting hyped. I got training camp just ready to pop around the corner. We don't know what the hell's going to go on with this team. We don't know what's going to go on with them. They can be great. They could be transitioning this year. The young guys could pop. They could maybe need a year. The scheme could hit the ground running and take off like a rocket. It might stay ground bound. We don't know what's happening, and part of that's the fun of it is the unexpected nature of this team all the way around. Offense, defense, whole team. Just don't know what you're going to get with it. But thank you, man. I really appreciate that, Sean. You're absolutely right. You can watch anything, but I appreciate you watching this. Mr. Dog says the Hawks Nest is permanently closed. No, I'll look and see if I can find some other options. We're going to do one more Wednesday show, so I will. I'll look up some other options, and then for you guys out there, if you guys got an option, put it in the comments or put it in the comments of the video after I post on the live stream. If there is a better place, I am kind of trying to keep it down to like Bothell area, between Renton and sort of Bothell-ish area at the furthest down, just because, I got to get down there once training camp finishes up. I still got to get down there to the spot, then back up to Renton, and then we got the training camp I got to get out to, not the training camp, but I got to get out to, for my flight the next morning. So, I got to keep it a little bit somewhat close. I know it's inconvenient a little bit on the, for some of you guys down there in the north end of things. And hopefully there'll be more of me being able to get up here and visit a bit more often now with where I'm at in my situation, and be able to do a couple of these. Whenever I come up, I'm going to definitely set these up, especially if we have a good one on this one. Always going just tell people to look on Twitter. I will definitely be, if you're not following me on Twitter, do follow me on Twitter at SeahawksNester, as I will be releasing the info over there too as to where I'll be at and heading to as well. I'm going to get a Hawks hat and put a tiny camera on the eye and boom. Oh, that'd be awesome. The thing is, then they probably have you take it down. It get taken down once I put it on YouTube. So I think that's where they'll catch you on that stuff. Some of the practice stuff, you'd be surprised. I know I can get game film on YouTube, but I've had the practice stuff get clipped where they really don't want that stuff on there. John says Dave and Buster's in Bellevue. That might be a better place to go, because that's got a little bit more of an opening than when we can meet up with more people at that point. I'll take a look at that. It's a good suggestion, John. Good seeing the house, brother. Chris says, how do you see our defense doing this year? I think it's going to be hard to predict exactly the way that this is going to shake out quite yet, Chris. The reason being is we don't know how quickly McDonald can onboard this scheme and defense. I don't have a question, Chris, on the talent. It's there. It's a lot of young talent within some guys that are good to go right now. You know what you're getting. Williams, Draymond Jones, Uchenna Nwosu. You know what you're going to get in these guys. Julian Love. You know what you're going to get in them. But there's a lot more younger talent that you're unsure of. And then you have a scheme that you're onboarding that's completely new. And you're going from the simplified to the complicated. And so you take those three different factors and you sort of throw them into the blender. And to me, I come out and I pour that thing out and I go, a lot of uncertainty there. Not because you don't have the good enough guys to get it done. Not because Mike McDonald isn't smart enough to be a good coach in this new place away from the Ravens. But just because you don't know how fast, timeline-wise, and that's really where to make the prediction and give you something that I know for sure is going to happen is hard to do. I think the defense is overall improved this year. It is a bit of a guess with those factors that are hard to place exactly. I don't think that it's a defense that quite finds itself into a top 10 state this year. I do think they get to a top 15-ish state, and that's a huge leap from where they've been at in recent years. So I do see improvement. I don't think it's going to be the dominance improvement thing. It'll be an improvement. They will clean up things that have been a problem in recent years, like tackling will get better. Your blitz rate will get better. Your success rate on third down will be improved. The time of possession won't be as skewed. These things will have immediate improvements across the board. But the defense as a whole may take a little bit of time because for those improvements will be there, Chris, there will also be the growing pains. There will also be those bad moments of miscommunication, those bad moments of a player who's traditionally within the scheme always done it this way, and now he's got to do it this way, but think about that way too, and I got caught in between. So hard to predict. I do think it will be improved, Chris. The schedule's set up to where you're not going up against every week is like, holy hell, one more tough defense after another. Last year's schedule had way more tougher defenses than this year. That also factors in. Or tougher offenses, sorry. So I think they'll be improved, but it is going to be some ups and downs within it. Silas says, do you think we finally beat the San Francisco this year realistically? I think we split San Francisco this year. I think if you put down to me the two teams between the two teams of the Rams and the Niners, who we have the better chance to split with, even though I would say the Niners have the best chance to win the division, I think the Niners are the team we have the best chance to split with between those two teams. The reason being is because I think that McDonald has more of a recipe for putting a stop to Brock Purdy, for shutting down Brock Purdy than other coaches do with the scheme that he runs. And the Rams, as the Rams showed last year, taking on the Ravens in Baltimore and hanging with the Ravens through I think all the way into overtime in that game before the Ravens finally won it. Stafford and the Rams can make some throws in the game, and he can make some reads in the course of the game against McDonald's defense to get you. I think with Purdy, you can get after him a little bit in a way and taking away the things he wants to do, forcing him into the things he doesn't want to do, and then that opens up more of an opportunity for you to then take that San Francisco team down once or twice this year. So I think it's realistic to think we can finally beat them once this year. I don't think we're going to go out and just dominate them. Part of it, though, part of a potential of you taking 2 wins, though, would be if you win 2 wins against the Niners this year, it will be because that same approach that McDonald established last year against the Ravens, when the Ravens, I believe, went into San Francisco on primetime and beat San Francisco on primetime. I think they had Purdy throwing 4 or 5, and he threw 4 interceptions, I think, that game. It may be just that he has that formula in place that he can keep applying to Purdy, where it's like, I know you can't hit it deep. I know there's the throws I'll force you into throwing that you're not going to comfortably want to throw. And that's where I think he'll drive towards with him like he did last year. But we'll have to see how successful it can be because of the fact that it was a one-off in that game. Maybe Shanahan and Purdy have some adjustments that they can bring to play at that point in time. I don't necessarily think so, but it's possible. Space says this is going to be insane. You better believe it will be. Harry says in Trump's voice, It's going to be huge. Rebuilt completely. We built the wall on the front line. We built it on the front line. It was beautiful. Silas says, but does he have the personnel to shut down Purdy? I don't know yet. With Purdy being shut down, it's really not as, to me, in my opinion, Silas, you're right. I mean, you do to a degree need to have the personnel to be good enough, right? That when it comes to Purdy, there's two things that you want to try to do with Purdy to basically put it onto his plate to carry the day. First thing is you've got to put some clamps on the run game with the Niners. So some of this, Silas, comes down to points of emphasis within the defense and then how your defense is structured to combat the strengths of the opposition. So when it comes to shutting down Purdy, first and foremost, the Ravens defense is going to begin with wanting to shut down the run. They want to set hard edges. So the big thing of what the Niners want to do in the run game, the run that they do more than any other run is outside zone. So they go outside the tackle's shoulder. They want to run it wide. They want to get you moving lateral and then let that running back cut it upfield based off his vision. What does Mike Macdonald do within his defense? First and foremost at the forefront is he wants his edges to set what they call hard edges. What's a hard edge mean? It means quite literally, if they're going to run outside zone to your side, if they're going to run a fly sweep out to your side, you need to force that thing back inside. You need to make sure that guy does not go outside of your outside shoulder. If I'm the right defensive end, that running back does not go outside of my right shoulder. If I'm the left defensive end, that running back does not go outside of my left shoulder. I force everything back into the line of scrimmage. So that's a scheme thing there, right, Silas? You know, that's a purposeful thing that's part of what Mike Macdonald wants to do to start his defense off. Okay, so that's the first thing. So you take a little bit of the running game away. Maybe not take it wholly away from the Niners, but you take a big part of that away from them just to, eke it out on you in that method. Now, the other part of it, and this is the big major difference between Coach Carroll and Macdonald on this and how they deal with the Niners. This is why the Niners, for instance, if you look beyond Purdy and you look to maybe a Garoppolo had a little bit of success against us, but even guys like Nick Mullins who came in and played against us at times, is that Coach Carroll's defense was going to play it the way they're going to play it. They weren't going to look at the opponent and then formulate a real game plan around who the opponent was they play. So when they play a Brock Purdy, they're going to protect the deep balls. They're going to stay to depth. They're not going to squeeze those short routes down. So they're going to give Purdy then the things he wants. I want to hit you here and hit you there and quick throws and get the ball out of my hand as fast as possible. Easy reads. Was Seahawks defense complicated before? No, it was not. Were you going to give the quarterback a lot of easy reads over the course of the game? Absolutely you were. You were essentially running as a defense into the jaws of Brock Purdy, into the mighty jaws of Brock Purdy. And what Mike Macdonald's defense does from a purposeful standpoint is, I'm not walking into your jaws. I'm taking away the thing you want to do. So he sets the hard edges. He stops the run game with the Niners first and foremost, or at least makes that a point of emphasis. And then he's going to squeeze down on those short routes. And he's going to say, okay, Brock, let me see what you got with your arm. Beat my defenders one-on-one. Beat my corners like Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen, who are great man defenders, and I'm going to have them in great man coverage, and I'm going to squeeze those other routes with a lot of zones up short. Beat my guys on the back end, and then fit that ball into a tight hole. I don't think you can do it. And that's more of, this is my purposeful approach. I'm doing this stuff on purpose, not by accident. I'm stopping you on purpose, not by accident. And that's why I think that there's much more opening here for there to be success, Silas, here as we play the Niners and going forward with Macdonald. Because he's actually going to take away the thing the Niners want to do. And that's the thing that Coach Carroll he was so married to that old defense and how he wanted to run it that he just kept trusting on the fact that if we just run what we run over the course of a game, we'll win. How? They'll get impatient. They'll make a mistake at some point. That's not really a sustainable way to run a defense anymore. It may have been at one time, but it ain't anymore. Brian Myers says feeling really bad about how inside linebackers will handle Kittle in the middle of the field. Well, if you have your starters out there, I mean, we're going to have two guys in the linebacker core right now in Dodson and in Jerome Baker that if they're out there and they're playing, Brian, they're going to be better in coverage than you've had in recent years from your two interior linebackers. part of the nice thing with both of those two guys' skill set is that neither of them have any real major strength to their game. You wouldn't say Dodson's a hammer in the run game or Baker is this insane blitzer, but they are good across the board in the allotment of their skill set. They can kind of do it all, which is part of the reason they were targeted by the Seahawks. It's that full skill set that Mike McDonald is always going to gravitate towards, but they can cover in space. And where Kittle could have some run, room, and roll before was because he was going to get matched up against a guy like Jordan Brooks, who just couldn't cover him in space. Now you'll have times where you're running zones in the middle of the field, and you're, like I was just talking before about this, where you've got your corners on the outside running man. Excuse me. You got your corners on the outside running man, and then you have, let's say, a stack front that you show. So maybe you got 7 guys in the line of scrimmage. You drop those 7 guys, you drop 3. You end up with 4 guys in the line of scrimmage and 3 droppers in space. But those 3 droppers in space, now they just stay up around the line of scrimmage. Like rather than them dropping to some deep zone at 30 yards like you might have had prior, they're there 10 yards taking the drop, or they're dropping to the sticks on a 3rd and 7. And so now when Kittle comes down the field there into coverage, he's not just having one guy that he's got to worry about in a zone sitting in the middle of the field. He's got multiple guys in the zone of where he's trying to run his route. And they're going to defend their zone smartly. They're going to pick him up and hand him off. And I think that that's going to open more of the door here to deal with Kittle better than we have in the past, Brian, where it's been either, Jordan Brooks is manned up one-on-one with him, he can't stay with him, or it was a linebacker in zone and he's out there with a lot of space around him and no one else around him, and he's got to try to cover Kittle in all of this space and wait for Kittle to come to his zone. Just wasn't really going to work before. I think it will be a bit better. Silas says that this defensive line is just missing one superstar player. I feel like we have a great supporting cast, but not the A-list star to lead it. Hopefully Murph can turn that quickly, if at all, like a Chris Jones, Aaron Donald, Derek Lawrence type. Well, I certainly think that you could see maybe a little bit in the Byron Murphy pick, a willingness or a seeking a little bit here into finding that kind of player you talk about. Being that you already had Draymond Jones, you already had Leonard Williams. It wasn't a pick of need. It was a pick of you really loving the upside of that player. And so that's a bit of proof to the pudding, Silas, of what you're talking about there in that that's something that you can see them seeking out in their approach in their direction. I think that they picked him because he was the most valuable guy they had on their board as well. And that it was really kind of a value thing, but you can make a pick like that for multiple reasons, not just one. When I do look at the Mike McDonald defense, Silas, I will say that this is the little bit of the thing I'd broach into that I'd say is a little bit like the quarterback thing that we talk about, where, there are 5 to 7 really amazing quarterbacks walking this planet. And there's about 14 or 15 fan bases that have talked themselves, and ownership groups and front office personnel and the contracts they've signed that have talked themselves into being 14 or 15 other guys that they're paying at the rate of those 7 or 8 guys, but they don't actually have those guys in their doors. You get falsely aligned on who is that guy. And so there is a scarcity, I think, to the amount of number of those kind of difference-making guys that are on that line, and they're hard to find. And it is ideal if you can find them, like it's ideal to find that walk-on-water type quarterback that can really carry a franchise. I don't know if this particular defense will necessarily need it as much, Silas, because Mike McDonald last year won the Triple Crown from a defensive standpoint. His team led the league in the least amount of points scored, the most, I think they had the most turnovers, and I think the most sacks or something like that. And they did that without that same A-list real player leading it. Maybe Roquan Smith, you'd say, is a 2nd or 3rd best inside linebacker in the sport, so maybe that guy would be that guy to that. But they had really good guys across the board. They were really strong fundamentally as far as the talent, where there wasn't a lot of weak links. But I don't know if there was a lot of A-list guys either on that, rolling that through either. And that's maybe the benefit of having a scheme that's more creative in its approach, that it doesn't require as much of the A-list guys. A Coach Carroll defense, for instance, so let me give you the flip side of this, Silas. I think a Coach Carroll defense does rely on that in the defensive line. He wants to be a guy that wants to blitz at a 32nd rate in the NFL or a 30th rate in the NFL. Well, then my front four's got to get it done, i.e., in getting it done, I'm going to need not only a front four to get it done, I'm going to need some star quality guys in there to get it done often, on the regular, because I'm not going to blitz. I'm not going to manufacture pressure. I'm not going to simulate pressure. I'm going to want those guys to get it all done on their backs. And so I've got to have a guy that can carry that load to do that. I don't know if it's as required as much in this McDonald defense, I would say. But it isn't something that you shouldn't still look for and isn't something that isn't valuable to have. I mean, it's a bit of, it ain't a requirement, I don't think, to have in this defense, but if you can supply it to this defense, does it then just take this defense to that next level? Possibly so. Possibly so. Right, Myers says, sounds good. Yeah, I think we'll be better off. And watching those guys' tape in Dodson and Baker, they cover and move in space. They handle themselves in zone much better than Bobby Wagner and Brooks would at times. Bobby did okay with it. With Bobby, sometimes it was a bit of a, just can he get to the spot anymore at his age? But Bobby's actually okay. Just we sometimes put him in a pickle with the coverage setups we'd put him into. But these guys can fluidly move all over the place in the defense. And they've been asked to do a variety of roles in both the defenses they played in. I think that will be better with the coverage stuff at the forefront a bit. Roxanne, I must leave. Thank you, Brandon. Great content per norm. Go Hawks. Well, thank you, Roxanne. I appreciate that. And thanks for the donation as well. Have yourself a great night. Pumpkin says bye. She says, have a good night, Roxanne. Say, have a good night. Say, have a good night. There we go. I give you a good night. There you go, Roxanne. Appreciate you. You have a good one. Long live the king. Thank you for the $5 donation. This Hawks Nest, always coming with the top-notch content. Well, thank you for that. Long live the king. I appreciate that, man. Very, very kind of you to say on that. Very kind. You guys are always very nice on the chat on that front of it. I really do appreciate it. Hope you're having a good one. Long live. Silas says, but they also had a star-studded group. Maybe not superstars, but Roquan, Patrick Queen, Marlon Humphreys, Justin Matabuke, Marcus Williams, and Geno Stone, if you want to stretch it. I don't want to keep you on this topic all night, but I'd love to have the back and forth. No, bro, Silas, especially with when we're in the off season right now and things are a little bit slower. I'm totally down to go back and forth on it. Absolutely. If you say we need star-studded or superstars, I think that there is a definitive difference between that group. For instance, I think the players that you mentioned above, Chris Jones, Aaron Donald, Dexter Lawrence, I think that those are special types of defensive tackles. I think those are separators, right? I think that to use your term, to say superstar players, I think that is accurate. And I think you're also accurate in marking guys like Roquan Smith, Queen, Humphreys, Matabuke, Williams. Like I said, Justin Stone's a little bit of a stretch. Certainly you could say those guys are stars or Pro Bowl level players. Let's throw, even Kyle Hamilton might be the guy that we could say is maybe their superstar or close to that, very close to that. So he's got really good players. But I also think that there's an equivalency here between when you look at the Seattle Seahawks roster and we just take the defensive talent that the Baltimore Ravens had and we look at those names and what those guys have accomplished and you look at the defensive line, or not the defensive, but you look at the defensive talent the Seahawks currently have and they're sitting on. And you kind of pair them back and forth. And you go, okay, they're stronger at their linebackers, but we're better in our secondary. And then you look at the defensive line and you go, okay, Matabuke. And you had Clowney last year. So we got to count where they had, I know Clowney's gone now, but they had Clowney last year. So you had Clowney, you had Matabuke, and Adafe, Kyle Van Noy, Michael Pierce. Not bad guys, solid upper to decent level guys, but I think that's where I say that this defense you're going to need stars. You're not going to have a defense just getting by a bunch of guys that are back end roster players that McDonald is just formulating these insane game plans to somehow find a way to utilize them to their utmost. You're going to need guys that can be good players in the league. But I think I guess I'm making the argument for Silas as much as anything, the assembly of the parts greater than the whole kind of thing, something like that, or the greater the whole better than the assembly of the parts. I probably said it backwards, and that you get the talent, you get that quantifiably there. McDonald can take that talent over, or he can take it from there. He goes, okay, you've done your part. You've handed me the cake baked. I'm going to slice and cut this up right now. Thank you. And that's my real point with this. I think we've given him that for what he's got at the base. With all of the defensive line talent you've brought in here over the last couple of years, with the edges that you have developing, with the secondary that's on the back end, this is a team where the only thing I think, in my opinion, Silas, holding the defense back this year is going from the simplified to the complicated. is the onboarding of the transitioning away from a coach who's been here for 15 years to a completely new coach. That's the only thing holding the defense back. It isn't that Mike McDonald can't teach it. It isn't that the talent isn't there to get it done. If we're looking at this a year ahead of now, and this defense gets to remain in about the same place it's at right now for the year of development for these young guys, I will be talking in July 21st of 2025 about the fact that this defense is likely to be a top 5 defense. With the personnel they're sitting on right now, absent really adding much else, maybe then some inside linebackers, maybe. Reinforce maybe some safety help or something, right? So it's only that transition process, it's only that onboarding process to me that's the holding back factor here. At the end of the day, I have complete and utter faith in McDonald and his scheme in this modern era at this time. When they're striking, when this thing is running hot with what's going on around the league with other offenses and what other defenses are trying to do. Silas says they just have top 5 players at their position all over the defense. I just don't think we can expect a defense like McDonald without that level of personnel, and we are far from that. Yeah, I don't think Marlon Humphrey is a top 5 player at his position. Geno Stone's not a top 5 player. Geno Stone got the interceptions last year, but he doesn't tackle for his life. There were times he was taken off the field last year because he couldn't tackle. Marcus Williams, I don't think is a top 5 safety for his position. I don't think that Patrick Queen is a top 5 linebacker in the sport either. So, and when it comes to defensive tackle, if we're just saying purely defensive tackle, Justin Matabuke is not a top 5 defensive tackle in the sport. Chris Jones, Dexter Lawrence, Jonathan Allen. I could probably go to about 7 or 8 defensive tackles. So is Kyle Hamilton a top 5 safety? Most definitely. Is Roquan Smith a top 5 inside linebacker? Yeah, sure. Most definitely. But that's it. That's the only guys on that defense that you could consider in that top 5 range. And I think that would be pretty, I think it'd be pretty universal, this opinion. It ain't to say Marcus Williams isn't still a good player or can't play, gets a little injured and beat up, but he can play. Same thing with Marlon Humphreys, but they're not top 5 at their position. I would say that. And now when it comes to Seattle right now, do we have a top 5 at our position? Well, I think Devon Witherspoon is top 5 at his position right now. We're going to need maybe another guy to develop into that place, but then again, that comes down to when we're trying to measure the pure talent of the rosters and how good each is, and understanding within this too, Silence, is it's not just about where the roster is talent-wise now, it's the understanding of you flip this roster over the last 2 years. You have young talent that is bubbling up right now. You have guys that are popping and getting better and are going to rise to that surface. Boye Mafe, can he be into one of those guys here as he continues to develop into year 3? We'll see. But I think the rosters are very close to each other. We're much closer to the Ravens as far as their talent level last year and what they were than we are further apart. The defense was being held back by the schematic, Silence. Let's get to the forefront of this. What was holding back the Seahawks defense? Lack of talent or schematics? Certainly the talent could have been better, but to me, the schematics stand at the forefront of the issues. And that is the thing that you've corrected this offseason. And it was no small issue. It was a thing that had been an issue going for years. And that's part of the reason I have such confidence, Silas, that this is an issue of not just really talent, that more it is the scheme. Is that you had Coach Carroll turn over this defensive roster 2, 3, 4 different times from the Legion of Boom era. And yet it didn't seem to matter the talent you brought in, how many picks you threw at it, how much money you put at it, how many desperate trade deadline deals you made. It didn't fix it. It didn't fix it because the base issue wasn't talent. The base issue at the end of the day was that you had a tired old scheme and a tired old approach and a coach that wasn't willing to update. That's why I have so much confidence in this positive impact that will come around on the other side of this, is because you held it back for so long, like a rubber band being pulled further and further back, held back. No, I won't let it go. I won't let it do that. My old way will work. My old way will work. My old way will work. And then finally, and that thing goes off like a rocket. that's a little bit of what I'm kind of counting on. I could be wrong with it, Silas, but that's kind of where I come from with it in my outlook of it. But I also think we have some really good players in this roster. Leonard Williams, Draymond Jones, Devon Witherspoon, Julian Love. These guys can play. Boye Mafe can play. That's a good all-around player. Uchenna Nwosu coming back this year. He can play. He's not a top 5 player in his position, but he's a good edge in this sport. A real good edge, a complete edge, like Boye. He'll play the run. He'll play the pass, you know? Pretentious Cameron, thank you for 22 long months as a Hawks Nest Pro Bowl member. I appreciate you for that, brother. Says, go Hawks. So close to the start of the season. 7 weeks away from the start of the season with the Broncos week 1. We got the 10th of August, which is now 19 days away for the first preseason game. So we are edging closer and closer and closer. I can almost taste it. I can taste it. Long live the king. Thank you for another $5 donation. I appreciate you for that. Long live the king. He says, we're anticipating the pros of our new regime. More aggressive, disciplined, creative defense, and creative offense. What are some possible cons? Great question. Long live the king. And thank you for that double dip on the dono too, brother. Very, very, very kind of you. So the possible cons, first, let's start with the defensive side of it. And that is that you are going to run stack boxes. Stack boxes mean that you end up with a lot of guys around the line of scrimmage. So as you make a choice anywhere with the defense, there's always going to be a potential opening for you into other places. And if a quarterback can anticipate those stack fronts, and can anticipate that his player A, because you drop out of the stack fronts more often than not, what the Ravens would do if they bring the stack fronts is they don't blitz the stack front. They end up in a 4-down lineman point. You just don't know which 4 are going to be the final 4 rushing the quarterback. So it might be 6, 7 guys on the line of scrimmage, but you always end up with, these 3 drop out and these 3 stay. You just never know which way the combo is going to come from on that. So within that, though, is that I have a lot of guys up at the defensive line of scrimmage at the snap, which means I got a lot more space here into the second levels of the defense than I might atypically get. A lot of Mike McDonald's defense is to have those guys drop off the ball and get then into space to get to those spots. But you've got a fast enough receiver off the line of scrimmage and you have a quarterback with a strong enough arm, there may be some natural holes in there that you can hit. This is a little bit of an explanation, for instance, why you might see a guy last year in Stafford who had luck against the Ravens in Baltimore, whereas Brock Purdy was unable to against the Ravens in San Francisco because Stafford had some of the natural goods there to be able to hit some of those throws that you have to hit. McDonald will make you and force you to throw some of those high-level throws to fit it in there, but if you have the quarterback with the talent to do it, there are going to be those holes to do it. Go to the final playoff game 2 of the Ravens here against the Kansas City Chiefs. The opening drive for the Chiefs, where great defense called by Mike McDonald. Mahomes just makes a great throw to Kelsey on 2 big throws on that drive. One to get up the football field and one on a back shoulder touchdown, which is just Kelsey and Mahomes on that psychic level thing going on that they had where there was nothing the defender could do. That's a Hall of Fame play by 2 players on that first drive. Just nothing you can do about it, right? But you're not getting out schemed at that point. You're not getting out chess matched at that point as a DC. You just got out goated. The goated on you. You got goated. It's not the worst thing to happen to you as a team or as a franchise if that happens. So understandable, I guess. Let me say that. As far as the defense goes within that a little bit, I think that there is always going to be within this particular defense, the Buddy Ryan defense of old, so to speak, is there are times where corners will find themselves out on islands. Even with the lack of necessarily high-end amount of blitzing with McDonald, he still's going to be middle of the road. He'll be around 15, 16-ish as far as his blitz rate goes. So still, he's willing to blitz. It ain't that he's just always in the 4-man fronts. You will get some blitzes. And so with a little bit of a heavier amount of blitzing, you're also on top of those holes that are there kind of at that shallow second level of the defense when you get the stack fronts. You also then get the holes on the deep back end at times or you get I got to trust my corner one-on-one to be able to run step for step with this guy on the outside and not get burnt thing going on. And so there is going to be more than we've seen in the last 14 years here, much more defensively of those plays mixed in throughout the course of the season of our guys probably getting beat over the top. That will happen, but it's sort of the price of admission. The price of admission for being a little bit more blitz heavy, the price of admission for having some free blitzers get to the quarterback from time to time and shutting down those drives and causing turnovers and allowing your defense to be more overall effective, is you'll get the occasional blown play deep over the top, especially long live the king in year one of a new defensive coordinator coming in here and onboarding this scheme. It'll be at a much higher rate this year than it will probably be into year 2 and year 3 of McDonald, once the players have the better details down pat and there's no kind of questions about that side of it. Offensively speaking, with the spread formation, the spread concepts really work at the college level and have permeated the college level because of the fact that you have the wide hash marks. So hash mark here, hash mark here, college level, hash mark way out here, college level. And then you go to the pros and the hash marks are here. So more often than not, in general terms, at the NFL level, you with the football are going to be at the middle or on the middle of the field or closer to the middle of the field than you are in college, meaning there's not a one side of the field that's a bigger side of the field to work. And a lot of what McDonald would do in college is he gets on this hash mark here and he's got the far hash mark, or they call it the field side, where you got the big field, right? Where you're on this hash mark and then there's a short amount of space to the out of bounds marker, because that's when you have the wide hash marks. That's what happens, is that the out of bounds marker is right there on your shoulder. So what he would do is he stacks all of these receivers with his spread concepts, let's say to the right side here to the short hash mark, right? And then he puts one receiver here to the wide side of the field. And then he says, all right, I'm going to give this guy all that room to run option routes and to work his magic one-on-one with this guy. And I am forcing all of these defenders over here to these guys to the short hash. And so now that starts to strain a little bit less. There's less of me being able to put him just to here and have this guy here to work as much over there with as much of that space to go with. So how can the offense work with a little bit more of a reductive amount of space within that, I would say, it is a little bit of the question that comes into place. This was something that I think probably impacted Cliff Kingsbury with the Cardinals, because he came there with the air raid offense. He was running it very true and pure as well there with Kyler Murray. No under center stuff, right? Just a lot of little short pop pass throws. But you felt like at times that things became very condensed for them in their spread concepts because they just didn't have as much space to work with as you'd get at the college level on that. So I think that that's a part. The ability to run the ball out of spread concepts, less of your necessarily 12, 13 personnel, less guys down in line of scrimmage to handle those bodies. Can they get that job done? Can they create those holes? Can your running backs utilize that extra space they have to work with, the less massive bodies down around the line of scrimmage? Does that give your running back more room to take advantage of his tackle breaking abilities? Because instead of it being two guys that have me corralled, now it's just one guy that's got me corralled and I just need to dance around him or run him over. And so I think that would be the main two spots that I go to in my mind, King, of where there could be some cons from Grubb's standpoint on the offense to have to adjust to. Because much in the same way of those hash marks, even the run game, you can take advantage of that, where you get numbers game to one side, you pull one guy over to here, you run the play to that side where it's a little bit weaker, where they are lighter on the bodies. Your run game is more effective to that light side of the field or that big hash side of the field a little bit. So it affects it both in the pass and the run. It's no, small thing. I do think that there's things that Grubb's done that have already gotten out ahead of some of the traditional elements that you would deal with spread. I might typically here tell you, King, you get spread concepts, you're getting the dink and dunk machine. The dink and dunk machine doesn't know how to push the ball up the field. This can be a problem of some of these spread concepts, is that they only know how to throw the ball 6 yards or bubble screens. But then we have here with Grubb, a guy that 1 in every 7 or 8 plays, he's taking a shot play. 1 in 7 or 8 plays, he's got a screen pass. Once a game, he's going to run a trick play. So he's already done some of the common cliched issues that you'd go to with spread concepts. He's kind of already gotten out ahead of in how he just runs this thing, his particular version of this spread. But those two things would be the things I'd go to in my mind, King, that stand out. Silas says, Matabuke, Hamilton, Smith, all top 5 in my opinion. Humphreys just outside the top 5. I'll admit that. I'm with you on the 100% with you on the Hamilton and Roquan Smith. And I'd even argue with both those two guys, Silas, that we could say that those guys are damn near maybe number 2 or I don't know if I'm number 1, but at the very least, maybe around that number 2-ish area of their positional rank. So not only are they top 5, they're high in the top 5 with Hamilton and Roquan Smith. Matabuki might be a tough sell for me on that because, and it's not really as much about Silas Matabuke not being a great player. He's developed into a really, really outstanding fine player. It's more of just the era that we're in right now as far as defensive tackles go. And we may just be different on our outlook on the DTs here, but like we're talking about, I mean, Chris Jones and who was the other one you mentioned above that? Not the one that retired, but you mentioned another one there. Yeah. So Chris Jones, Dexter Lawrence, that's 1-2. There's no doubt. We're in agreement with that. So, it comes down to then, Silas, 3, 4, 5 for us. And whether you've got a guy on 3, 4, 5 that, you would say is in Matabuke that fits to that spot. I look at it and I would say, I think that there's Jonathan Allen, LaRon Payne, Quinnen Williams. I'll give you this. It's probably close at that point. I wouldn't maybe have him in the 5, but I also wouldn't have him far out the 5 as I think about it. But this is also where he's a tough one too, Silas, because we could be talking about guys that aren't put in the same kind of position he is to do what he does. So take a guy like Ryan Clark, who just got paid by the Green Bay Packers, I think today. Ryan Clark's not going to put up statistically the sack numbers of Matabuke, but Ryan Clark within the defense of Green Bay is asked to do things from a role standpoint much differently than what Matabuke is asked to do within the Ravens defense. That's where it gets hard to kind of stack the DTs up on this because Matabuke is so much of a pure 3-tech type defensive tackle. And a lot of these guys are a little bit of nose tackle 3-techs. They do a bit of the both thing going on. Silas says, I agree that scheme is horrible. I could be overselling it too, Silas, a bit. I'll own that. It was a thing that over the years started to just get stuck more in my craw, following the team, Silas, because it was something that, you see for a couple of years out and you start mentioning it and it's just not getting changed and it continues to permeate and you turn on the All-22 and you're watching the All-22 and you can just see how offenses are easily attacking the defense. I mean, there's so many times I've watched All-22 tape over the last few years where I'm just watching the quarterback and I go, how does the quarterback not just go to that route? The Niners, where you got a base package situation a couple of years ago, remember, on a play. And the Niners have Deebo Samuels to one side of the field. They've got no receivers to another side of the field because there's only 2 wide receivers and 2 tight ends on the line. So we keep our cornerback on this side of the field. We have 1 cornerback here. And then we have our strong safety up here, right? So they have 2 receivers. We have 1 corner. We're keeping our other corner to the other side of the formation. And then we have our strong safety here directly across from the wide receiver who's just lined on the inside, being Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk was in the slot. Deebo's on the outside. Okay? So Deebo runs a go route. Brandon Ayuk runs an out route. Okay? So outside, you got Deebo. He runs that. He's on the outside. He runs the go. Ayuk cuts in behind him, right? Deebo's running off that outside corner. Ayuk runs in behind him. Ayuk is unguarded at the line of scrimmage. The safety is the closest guy to him 15 yards off in space. It's those type of plays you'd watch from a schematic standpoint where, number 1, an easy read for the quarterback to go to. I know there is no way that safety is going to be able to take Brandon Ayuk, one of the best route runners in the game, and key in on the fact he's going to run that out route. Because first and foremost, within the scope of this defense, he has to stay on top. He has to not get beat beyond anything else. Coach Carroll has programmed him. I, as a Kyle Shanahan, know this. I, as Brock Purdy, know this. The whole Jam Stadium knows this. that he has to stay on top. That safety cannot, even though he also has a responsibility on this play to dealing with that slot receiver. So my chances on that out route being open as an understanding from a quarterback, from a coach perspective, from a Niner perspective is almost 100% that thing's going to be wide open. And I swear I watched this thing 20 times to try to understand watching just this one play, because I would see so many plays like this where you go, how does Coach Carroll look at this play and expect there to be any success on this play for a player? How is this not an easy first down every single time the Niners want to run that play? I can predict your corner's not going to travel across the scheme. He's going to stay over there. You've got one outside corner. You got one safety up high. There's not extra men to deal with this receiver. You're not going to drop a linebacker in on Brandon Ayuk and expect him to cover him in space. This is where we come to that. Everything was so simple and easy in what you did and how you did it for the opposition. It sounds like, well, you say it's just simple and easy. No, that is as simple and easy as it gets. I have an uncovered man at the snap, slot receiver. I got an outside guy who's going to run the off coverage. I got a safety I know who's going to play high. He may be cover 3. He may be cover 2. He's going to be playing it high and over the top. I'm going to run the out route. I'm going to run a dig in. I'm going to run a stop route. Spin the magical ball. Whatever answer came up was going to be open. Any one of them was going to be wide, buck naked open. Whatever you want to do with that, And that's where I may be overstating my cause on it, Silas, on that. I could be. And maybe I've got just the PTSD thing sticking into my head from so many years of looking at the All-22 on this and just going, I'm an idiot. I'm not some super smart guy when it comes to looking at football. I'm not some freaking whatever. I'm right along with you guys. I'm just a fan watching this through. So when it gets to the point of me as a layman, as a moron, who can sit there and watch something and go, that's wide open. I would throw that. I would throw that. It's so easy. It's so easy. If I can be like that, then the super smart guys across the NFL that are playing on a weekly basis damn well know it to the nth degree. And so I might be overstating it, but it is something I do feel in my bones that, Silas, it wasn't just a matter of a small little thing of, the scheme, kept us a little bit behind the 8 ball every week. I think the scheme kept us far behind the 8 ball on a weekly basis. And our players had to overcome it on a weekly basis. And it's part of why I have so much confidence in the talent we have, Silas, is the fact that you've been able to just somewhat keep this boat still on top of the waters despite this big hole in the boat bleeding water in on a constant basis, gushing water in on a constant basis, builds a little bit of that confidence for me and the talent on the team currently, and that maybe they can maximize this quicker and faster to a greater degree. I have hand grenade in Trump's voice. We'll build a wall. It'll be beautiful. Hawks colors all over. Beautiful bodies. Silas, man, thank you for the $10 donation. And Silas, I always do appreciate the discussion too, brother. So thanks for engaging on that. I love this stuff. He says, always appreciate talking football with you. I feel like you're one of the few Seahawks YouTubers who are knowledgeable about the game on a similar level to Marcus Whitman or Brett Coleman. Keep it up, B. Well, those guys are smart dudes. Brett especially knows his stuff backwards and forwards. I would love to rise to his level of informative nature, and I'm always trying to get to learn this more and more. It's been one of the fun parts of this offseason for me, Silas, and I'm still in the process of understanding it, is starting to learn this defense. I knew Coach Carroll's defense backwards and forwards. There wasn't a lot there. I'll be honest with you. There wasn't a lot of little adjustments or things built within, but this defense is wholly different, and I'm on that path of trying to learn it now like you guys all are, and so hopefully I can come along further bit by bit with it, because it's a lot. It ain't easy. This is 9 more, whereas before we had like 1 moving part, now we got 9, now we got 9. But it's fun to be able to, always with football, you're learning something new. There's always something that you didn't understand about it, or something that's just been invented to come along. And it's part of what I love about this sport, Silas, is unlike other sports that kind of stay stagnant and are just what they are, and that's what they'll always be. And it's the players that'll make it. This gets to be one where the players make it, but the coaches make it too. The scheme makes it too. The play calling makes it too. It all interweaves. It all interweaves into a beautiful tapestry. And if you've got the right guy that can whittle that thread, he can build for those players a advantage that other coaches can't. he can give you that little bit of an extra advantage that not only has been missing for us, but when teams are able to have it and it goes in conjunction with having good talent, those are the teams that become elite. Those are the teams that go out there and contend truly for Lombardis, where the pairing of the talent fits to great coaching on top of it. Now, Kansas City Chiefs have certainly done great having Patrick Mahomes as the second GOAT to come behind Tom Brady, seemingly. They got their own little GOAT run going there. But it's also because they have the brilliant mind of Andy Reid and his offense and how he constructs that offense. It's also in recent seasons because of Steve Spagnuolo, a guy that won a Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator with the Giants, really utilizing those NASCAR packages back in the day with those Giants players, right? Where he'd go to his pass rushing set of front four and they would just get after it. And then now he's more wholly transitioned into the Chiefs, where it's less about relying on just a front four and more of a variance, more of a, we're going to throw you every different look over the course of the game. We're going to get you as a quarterback uncomfortable in that you're never feeling like you're certain on what you're going to see from us snap in and snap out. He's invented himself, but that's part of what being a brilliant defensive or offensive mind they do, much in the way that Andy Reid has as well. This is how you last 3-4 decades in the sport as a coordinator. And so that's the part I think I'm touching on too as much as anything, Silas, is just that belief in when you can have a guy in there who brings that, how much that can benefit your team, how much that can bump things up a bit for you. And it will be the fun part of this year to see if it does that for us. It'll also, for me, Silas, confirm a little bit more as I'm speaking hard about it and saying, I think a big part of this is what held us back, being that scheme and their approach. And that you go out this year and this thing takes off quickly. And this team goes out there and soars to some newer heights that they haven't realized in 5, 6, 7 years, 8 years. Then we do know that it's logically speaking, that was what was holding it back by and large. That you had the players in place, that they probably did underachieve a little bit versus their talent over the past couple of years. And that this thing did, quantifiably hold you back in a way that was preventing you from reaching into that elite stage of things. But it will be confirmed one way or another on that silence for sure with that. And I really appreciate the kind words, and I really appreciate the back and forth on this, man. I always love having these discussions going back and forth, and it always, as I say, Silas, informs me as much as anything coming out of it and trying to inform anybody else. So thank you, man. I really appreciate you and very kind of you on the don't know. Silas says he's got Chris Jones 1, Lawrence 2, Quinn Williams at 3, Matabuke at 4, and Wilkins in my 5 list. I'd be okay with that. It's dead to me. It gets dead set on the first probably 3. Williams at 3 that's probably about right. The first 3 there, and then I think that it's a good debate then with 4 or 5, where I think there's probably about 5 or 6 guys that you could come up with that have a little bit of maybe some reason to be put into that area of things. But it gets hard for me, like even a guy like Ryan Clark, who's usually excellently well rated by PFF. Every time I watch us play Green Bay, he's been a problem for us in dealing with them. But he's also not a guy like Matabuke where he's just purely rushing that quarterback. He's playing in the 3-4 a lot of times. He's taken on the 2 blockers. And if you're going to get blocked more often than one guy versus another guy gets blocked with a double team, that's going to remove down your effectiveness a little bit as a player if another guy's being able to get single blocks more often than not. And a big part, of course, what the Ravens did with their defense and those stack fronts too, Silas, those stack fronts then really do provide your pass rushers that ability to then be singled up, because the stack fronts make the offense think a blitz is coming. They change the protections of the offense. So you walk up the line of scrimmage as an offense and you say, okay, we got Justin Matabuke up front. We're going to fit him up there with our left guard. And then we're going to have the running back come up and help him out. Or we're going to have our center go over there and double team him. But then you put a double A gap pressure look with 2 linebackers in the A gap. And now your center's got to go to him. And then you bring a running back here to go to the second linebackers. Now the linebackers drop out in coverage. These 2 guys are sitting here already trying to block guys that aren't there. And then you end up with the one-on-one with Justin Matabuke. You've manufactured the one-on-one with the simulated pressure. And that's again where to me it makes it hard at times on how you evaluate these interior defensive tackles when they have those kind of different roles in that way, where it's not just pure like maybe it would have been, like Silas, if we were in like 1988, where probably 80% of the teams were running a 4-3 defense or 70% of the teams were running a 4-3 defense. And you could, this defensive tackle, if he was getting after it, was a 3-tech, and the other guy was just a space eater that just kind of sat in place and took up bodies. It's part of that evolution of the sport too, and making it harder for me to kind of figure out how to put these guys there. But I think it's fair. Once you get past 3 there, I think it's fair however you'd spin those guys up. Long live the king. Thank you for the $5 donation. Says, do you have a top 3 players on each side of the football that you anticipate will go to new heights with our new staff? Oh, it's a great question, King. Great question. Offensively, speaking, I think that DK Metcalf, Kenneth Walker, and Jackson Smith and Jigba would be 3 guys that are going to go to new heights. Jackson Smith, easy to see because he had 600 yards receiving last year, and it's just easy to say, well, there's another 400, 500 yards there, especially with the way that he's really stepped forward. You think about his usage last year, long live the king, 70% of the targets thrown his way, either behind the line of scrimmage or inside of 9 yards of the line of scrimmage. That's going to change immediately. He's going to get more looks down the field, and he'll be more effective with it. With DK, he's going to be a centerpiece of this offense. They're actually going to use him as an number 1 target in the passing side of things. He's going to be moved around in this offense a lot to allow him to be able to really feast as that number 1 option. Not just be the number 1 option on the outside getting doubled, and then Geno's informed by the double team and then has to move on in his progression. We're going to say, safety's closing. He's bracketing over the top. Now we get DK in the slot. Maybe we get more of DK in some bunch looks. Try to get some places to where you get him a little bit more space to work with, or at least to peel back some of those double teams. With Walker, he's going into what I would consider kind of a contract year. He can go out there and put 1,500 yards up, 15 touchdowns up, which is what I am forecasting. 1,500 total yards, if not even more so than that. 15 touchdowns, because he's going to get the ball. He's going to get the ball in his hands in space, and he's going to get room to work. All of those things have been, by and large, removed from him here in Seattle over the start of his career. It's not that we haven't at times given him those opportunities. We just haven't featured him in those opportunities as much. It's been much more of, hey, go hit the A and B gap runs. Much more of the, we're going to just go run gap power downhill. Not a gap power guy. It's a guy that you want to get out in space and let him go work. And whether it's in the screen game or whether it's outside pitches or outside zone, they're going to get Walker in space to let him to go out there and be at his most effective. So much like with Metcalf, guys that I think are going to be flirting right around that 1,500-yard marker, well over 10 touchdowns each. And so Jackson Smith is going to be a guy that does fit to that spot. I'll give you one other guy because Jackson Smith's kind of an easy one, long live the king, and that's Charles Cross. Charles Cross played in an air raid scheme coming out of college. They threw 73% of the time coming out of Mississippi State. He's going to come back to a call. He's going to come back here into an offense that's going to throw probably about 68% of the time. So he's going to be back around in that line of where he was with college and a lot of pass reps. When he's asked to run block, he's going to be asked to run block in situations where the defense is maybe thinking it's going to be a pass, so you're catching him off guard. It's going to be doing a lot of mobility stuff, pulling out in front, not necessarily being asked a little bit like you might have been prior asked to just get up in front of that guy in front of him and knock him off the ball. There'll be some of that, but less again of the having that be the feature by which in the run game you open up holes for your running back, and more of now we're going to utilize your mobility and utilize your ability to get out in space at the forefront. A little bit more of how you feature versus just kind of fitting something in where you're sort of just kind of, just sort of mixing it in versus really truly featuring it. And so Cross is going to fit to this new offense really well. And it wouldn't surprise me if he really does take off within that. Defensively speaking, King, Boye Mafe had a streak last year of, I think, 7 or 8 straight games of having a sack to start the year off. And we all went, wow, okay, he's taking that next step forward in a major way. And then we saw at the end of the year, the sack numbers, the pressure numbers divvied down just a bit, dived down just a bit. And that was because he was getting more double teams, and he was getting more double teams because Uchenna Nwosu went down with the midseason injury. And so teams were like, well, this is the one guy that can really be a problem for us as a pass rusher on this team, so let's take care of him. I was just making the point to Silas about how the Ravens did a great job with McDonald's stack fronts of not only forcing offensive lines to change their protections, but enforcing those changes of protections to then allow for their true great pass rushers the one-on-one opportunities. So why did Jadeveon Clowney have a career of the year this year? Jadeveon Clowney's been in this league for 10 years, right? He's been with 3 different franchises, including our own. Why is it this last year Jadeveon Clowney had his best year with the Ravens? Did a light bulb go on in Jadeveon? Did he learn some new pass rushing move that he didn't know 9 years prior? That was not the case. The reason why he took a step forward is because what really held Jadeveon back as a pass rusher through the years, because he's always been a good run defender, was his inability to get around the double teams and the triple teams. You know, if you throw a chip out on him on top of having a guy block him on the side, you could kind of neutralize Jadeveon as a pass rusher. But what McDonald's scheme does with those stack fronts is pull those protections off the double teams, allow your guys the one-on-one opportunities, and now they can go really, truly just beat their man one-on-one without some extra guy coming in and knocking them on their face out of left field suddenly. So Mafe is going to have the opportunities that allowed him to have a sack in every single game to kind of start the year off in the same way now because of the way the scheme creates those opportunities for these guys. So he will be a guy that I think goes to new heights in this defense, 13, 14 sacks because of that, as long as he can stay healthy. Witherspoon will go to new heights because this is the best type of defense. I mean, if you took every defense in the NFL across the board, every defense is being run in every little type of iteration it's being run within, there is no defense in the NFL, I think, that best matches Devon Witherspoon than this defense and how it's going to utilize his skill set. As EJ Schneider said on my show a couple weeks ago, and I did a little short on this on my Clips channel, this is Kyle Hamilton on steroids. This is Devon Witherspoon. So that'd be my number 2 guy. Number 3 is a little bit tougher. I guess I'll go Tariq Woolen. I'm a little torn on the king on the last one, to be honest with you. But I just keep coming back to that stat of Tariq Woolen and being the best in man coverage last year, and that McDonald will just be staring at that number and aware of the fact this guy's got that so well in his game. And so much of the Ravens defense comes back to the Buddy Ryan defense. And though Mike McDonald has really evolved it beyond that with so much of the zone concepts he builds within his defense versus the predecessors like Rex or Buddy, where, or even Wink Martindale, where it was just very blitz heavy and then man coverage on the outside. And the change that he's brought into place is that he's not as much blitz heavy and he's more about the zone defense on the outside. But there is always a draw within this defense to go back to the man coverage concepts, I think. I do believe that, King. And so having the guy that was your best man cover corner in football, I would think would pull McDonald that much more to having him do that. And then you hear Leslie Frazier talk about the fact that they're going to have him moving with the receiver throughout the course of the game. And it does start to make you feel like maybe they'll be able to maximize more of him to his utmost, because if he is traveling with the receiver, that's going to make it harder for teams to just target him in the run game, to just run to his side of the field and force him to be a tackler. You're able to then maximize the man coverage stuff, especially at that point. So I'll give you Tariq as my 3rd guy on that, but it does get hard to quite target the 3rd guy on that. There's about 5 different answers I could give you and make a case for on that one, and none of them I'm exactly certain of. The first 2 I feel good about, that the 3rd one I'm kind of like, I don't know about the 3rd guy. There will be a 3rd guy that comes to the forefront. I'm just not sure about who it is on that. War Chief says, I agree the defense needs to be tip-top. They need to be better as a defensive fanatic. These last few seasons have been driving me bald. It's been brutal at times watching this defense play. You're bad schematically. You don't tackle well. You're not disciplined. You make silly mistakes. It's been brutal all across the board. There's nothing for us to really hang our hat on here, defensively speaking, in recent years. And it just does get frustrating, especially when defensively you're not getting beat because you're trying to be super over-aggressive. You're not getting beat because you're trying to put the offense under pressure. You're getting beat with these soft zone coverages, staying super deep back, just getting bled to death slowly, week in and week out, with no adjustments made. That's what really ultimately just drives one bald on that side of it, like you say, War Chief. On the King, my top 3 on offense are JSN, Geno, and Sharps. I forgot about Geno. Geno might be the guy I'd put in there above even JSN. So I am anticipating a 4,600-yard season from Geno. So I like your picks, man. I do like your picks. War Chief DK Metcalf is the best player on our whole team. Second is Devon Witherspoon. I like that. I could go with that. You can sell me on that, War Chief. Brian says, don't sell yourself short, B. You've got the X's and O's down. Oh, thank you, Brian. I appreciate that, man. Those guys are those guys really know their stuff on stuff, man. You know, always learning, Brian. I'm always trying to learn and get a little bit better on this stuff, you know. There's so much to kind of learn, but it's also fun. The more you learn about this sport, another layer that opens up to you. It makes you appreciate it that much more. That's kind of you to say. Thank you, Brian. Boys, hand grenade. Now, I'm not saying Purdy isn't good, but I'd throw 5,000 yards a game if I had the same receivers. It does help if you have guys that can create that much separation as they can, and you have a coach in Shanahan who's smart about scheming the stuff up as he is, and you got a stronger running game to lean on as they do. And yeah, there's a lot of Purdy talk right now. It's kind of interesting as you're seeing the Purdy narrative shift and change before our very eyes now, where I'm hearing all these national pundits coming out, you know, trying to talk about how legit he truly is. And they're not putting him in the top 10 by these. They had a recent poll, I think, with general managers and front office members. And they didn't put Brock Purdy in the top 10 of quarterbacks. And so it caused a lot of uproar this last week where pundits and analysts were, he's top 10. And they got all these analytic stats that they try to present for Brock Purdy. You know, he's analytic this, and he's second in analytic that, and he's second in, it's like, they keep presenting the stats like, what I've watched him play. There is arm strength limitations. You can cover it up with all the analytic numbers you want, but at the end of the day, I can force him into throws that he doesn't want to have to make because he doesn't have to get up and go in that arm to make it happen. It's just all about whether you have the defense that can force him into that corner or not. War Chief Brandon, I'm going to make a small prediction. George Alani earns the 3rd running back spot by the start of the season. Let's go, War Chief. Well, he's a fun player to watch on tape, man. He's a very inventive running back. Great balance. Really fights hard. You know, you want to see in your running backs guys that are they're never going to die easy, like Marshawn Lynch used to say. His coach used to tell him. And this kid does not do that. He's going to give you everything he's got with every run. He's not the biggest of cats, but he'll give you all he's got. And I think at the very least, he's got an inside path to making the roster as the 4th guy, War Chief, and it's opened up behind the first 2 guys. It's anybody's game at that point. On the game, top 3 on defense would be Jones, Spoon, and our safety. Pick anyone, IMO. All right. I like that's good picks. Where she says, I plan to put money on the fact that this new offense skyrockets DK into superstardom. Top 3 by the end of the season. Top 5 by mid-year. Let's go, War Chief. Love it. Let's go. I love it, man. Brian, San Francisco has 2 or 3 receiver cores in the league until they traded wide receiver. Has a top 2 or 3 wide receiver core in the league until they trade. Yeah, I'd agree with that, Ryan. I think that's pretty accurate. Top 2 or 3. I guess if you factor in the tight end play with it, Juwan Jennings is solid. Debo, Brandon Ayuk, Kittle. Is there a better 4-man combination anywhere else in the sport right now? Probably not. Good point. I mean, it's probably true. I can't think of any. You got the A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert. Well, it's at least in contention. Or Chief, not a big fan of Kittle. Kenny Clark, Silas? Yeah, Kenny Clark was who I was meaning on that. Wow, I guess Kenny Clark had 9 sacks last year. I didn't know he had that many. I was picturing him just kind of more run stuff with a little bit of pass rush. Brian says, Brandon asked this before, but had to step away. Thoughts on the running back room within the new offense, especially depth? I love the running back room right now more than I have ever liked the running back room coming into the season as far as the totality of the running back position. When Marshawn Lynch was here, you had a certain level of confidence with that group. Whoever else was behind him, be it Robert Turbin or Christian, whoever, you're like, we're fine. We ain't going to need number 2. But where this running back room is right now in total, in the top end to the back end, and in the varied ways that these guys can be utilized, where they're not just one-trick pony types, short yardage back, third down back. These guys all have a little bit of those skills all fitted within them. They can all do it all a little bit. And then you've got some difference makers there on top of it. Some really highly talented guys that you're not just doing the NFL way of, we'll get by on 4th and 5th rounders back there and hope that's enough. So I'm more confident now than I've been in this running back room in years. Even the last couple of years where you've had maybe the top 2 guys you felt okay about, but then you're getting to Travis Homer and DJ Dallas. Chris Carson, Rashad Penny, but then your DJ Dallas, like that was pretty weak group, especially for a team that was going to be so committed to running the ball as you knew those teams were going to be. It was really on the back of Carson remaining healthy at that time more than anything else. So we're in a different stage now. And we took 2 running backs in the second round back to back. That's rare for teams to do. A lot of teams get all up in arms about doing that, and you can't draft backs that high. But what it has done as an offshoot, whether you are against it or for it, what it has done as an offshoot is make your running back room really talented. Really talented. And then Kenny McIntosh was a steal and a half in the 7th round. Basically dropped in the draft because he ran a 4.63 40. That's why he dropped in the draft pretty much. And so you got that guy in there. And then George Fulani, we just talked about last show on the UDFA show about what he can bring to play. It's a good running back room. It's a talented running back room, fully capable across the board of those guys having a lot of carries and being able to hold up on those carries. All of them can be a third down back if you need them to be. So you've got the depth, you've got the star power, you've got the multiple roles that they can all fit into. It's kind of an ideal situation. And I think 1 through 4, we're talking about maybe the Niners having one of the better receiver rooms in the NFL. 1 through 4, I think there's a very strong argument to be made that the Seahawks have the strongest running back room in the entire NFL. Brian says, I posted my grub prediction a few places earlier this week. He takes the Fresno State job after this year. It's possible, Brian. I think that typically when you have a coordinator like this go back to the college level to be a head coach, it's because they don't believe that they've got the pathway to go be a head coach in the pros. And if Grubb comes out in his first year and he does what we think he's going to do, let's kind of pencil it out, where it's a 4,600 yard year from Geno, it's a 1,500 yard year from Kenneth Walker, it's a dynamic top five type offense. If it's in his perspective at that point, he's looking down then 2 different clear choices to me at that point, Brian. The first one being, let's say it's a Fresno State or, Fresno, it doesn't matter if it's exact Fresno State. I know you're meaning by that he takes kind of a job at that kind of level of college visibility. But if he has that year also, he's in a little bit of that situation that we see a guy like a Bobby Slowick in coming into this year. Or the guy there out there at Detroit who was kind of in there this past year as well. Where if, okay, you were a top 5 offense this year, you go back and replicate that a second year, you're going to get head coaching calls in the pros. So do you want to go back to a smaller college and because you don't want to wait that 1 year to do that, or come back, duplicate your efforts, and then you've got an inside track to getting a pro job somewhere in the NFL. And I think ultimately, I think Grubb's goal is to be an NFL head coach. And then ultimately within that, what is the best pathway to me getting to that head coaching spot? And it seems like right now the NFL is telling us that become a coordinator. And if you can become a great coordinator, you will have a road open to you to becoming a head coach, and very quickly, as long as you don't mess up your job interview like the Lions OC did. It sounds like with Seattle and Washington. Chris says, just tuning in. What did I miss? Brian Myers, Grubb returning, slamming it back to Fresno State. I can't see him being one and only. Sorry. Now we're covering a couple of topics, just talking about some storylines, covering training camp this year, Chris. Nothing too fancy. Long live the king. On the bright side, the petition to change our name to the Seattle Soft Zone Hawks has been delayed. Thank God. Thank God for that. King's my favorite Seahawks running back duo was Kurt Warner and John L. Williams. Undoubtedly. That was the best all-around one. I mean, that was an exciting. Those guys you talk about a running back room that could do it all. John L. could be a feature back for you, fullback. You'd be a fullback Kyle Juszczyk kind of piece where you could use him every which way but loose on that. Liked a lot too the Sean Alexander Max Strong combo. You know, Sean maybe had the most ideal fullback for him and what he did as a running back and his vision and keeping him, you know, immediately clean so that he could keep his vision and eyes in the right place to make the right kind of cut. And Mac was an underrated player as far as having a full skill set. He could catch out of the backfield. He could run the ball a little bit, some of those fullback dives on 3rd and 14. But John L. and Kurt were, you wouldn't find a more athletic, capable duo in Seahawks history than those two. Ricardo, Steve Sarkisian only lasted for one season in the NFL. It could happen to Grubb. I'm hoping that it works out, but the track record isn't great. It could go that way. The thing, though, the one thing I'm saying with that on this, though, is that if we look at the Sarkisian deal, Sarkisian took over for Kyle Shanahan in Atlanta, and that there were bumps in the road for Sarkisian taking over. It wasn't a smooth onboarding process for Steve to try to make that work there with Atlanta. And so part of then Steve's reasoning for going back to the college level wouldn't be what I'm talking about necessarily with Grubb, where Grubb goes out and has a very successful year as an OC. It was more of a middling opening year there for Sarkisian with Atlanta, and then that had him going back to the college level, where there wasn't as much of a clear path for Steve to go and get a head coaching job at the NFL level because he wasn't looking like as much a success as an OC at the NFL level. So I think that would be the one difference between that. I would say, granted, Ricardo, is that if it's like you say, where it doesn't work out with this offense here, then there could be that way where he goes to Fresno State, like we saw Sarkisian then go to, I think he go to Alabama, I think is the OC there or something like that afterwards, or maybe he went right to Texas at that point. I can't quite remember how that went, but yeah, that could definitely go that way if it didn't work. But if it works, then I don't think he goes back to college. If he's successful here, then I think it's only you stay here and continue to keep that eye to the horizon when you potentially can be a true head coach somewhere in the NFL. Chris says we definitely have a legit running back room, more so than in recent years, but it's dependent on the O-line success too, obviously. Yeah, the guys can't do it on their own. I do think having difference-making backs have helped us out in the last couple of years at times where we haven't had a good run-blocking line, but these guys have been able to average over 4 yards a carry because of their ability to break tackles even behind the line of scrimmage. So I think that it's one of those things where you need always the offensive line to maximize your running back, but if you have a difference-making running back and you've done those steps to take care of that offensive line and make sure that they're where they need to be to open up those holes for him, he can then be a star-level player. And that's why I have that outlook, Chris, of a guy like Walker having 1,500 total yards this year. Is the thing that's been missing in recent years is not his ability to stay healthy or his ability to break tackles or be a difference maker. It's been that you can't consistently get him holes opened up and you have not run a very particularly creative scheme. Those things now become eliminated. So now those barriers that prevented him from that upper end of success become removed. And that's why I predict the success will then come with it this upcoming year. Tony, Borges Silva, thank you for the $5 donation and your longtime support as well as a Hawks Nest member. I really do appreciate you for that. Tony says, I think Seattle can compete with the best receiving core. DK, JSN, Lockett, and Fant. Fant will have the best year of his career. I would agree with you on that. I think that kind of all the way around, I'd agree with you on that, Tony. I think that we definitely, when you talk about our 3 plus the tight end, who's got a better 3 plus a tight end out there in the sport right now? I don't think that there's one that exists. I really don't. And you can maybe make your argument you've got a better 2 plus year tight end like the Eagles, maybe with their situation, but not 3-1, not 3 to the Fant. You don't. They have stacked up that receiving core very strongly, and it's kind of ridiculous when you think about how strong you built this receiving core with a guy like Fant that's there, with your blocking tight ends you put in around that, and then to consider that's with also then having 2 second-round running backs in your stable as well. You got those skill positions all on the outside and the running backs in the back end too as well. That's a ton of firepower. Just a pure firepower at that. Fant has come to Seattle the first 2 years of his career and has not even been able to necessarily quite get to the spot of where he was at with Denver, Tony. But I like you look at it as not him not succeeding here or him doing something lesser here when he came to Seattle versus Denver. I look at it more in that light of we just haven't utilized him right. We have not utilized him to the utmost. And he has certainly never at any one point in time been the number 1, the number 2, or even the number 3 really target within this offense. They get around to him, but they get around to him eventually. And this gets paired with the fact that you are a team that targets the middle of the field at the 32nd level in the NFL. And if you show me a team that targets the middle of the field at the least amount of any team in the NFL, I will show you a tight end on that team with very limited production. It's kind of stunning that he was even able to put up 400 yards of receiving yards the past 2 years when you consider that fact alone. We are going to throw at the 32nd level to the middle of the field between the numbers than any team in the NFL. That's where a tight end lives. That's where a tight end gains his yards, does his work. So yeah, I agree. You're going to very, very likely here see him have the best year of his career. He's going to have moments of being featured. You're going to hit him on the bubble screens. He showed you last year a couple times, the Giants game, the Steelers game. You get him the ball with his hands in space, and he's actually got some yak ability from the tight end position. That he's got ability to get up and go. So I love your prediction, and I would tend to agree with you. I could see Fant absolutely having a career year here. Grubb will take advantage of that mismatch that he provides, Tony. Great thoughts, man. And thank you for your support to the channel, brother. Seahawks Gaming. Nothing beats Travis Homer and Adrian Peterson duo. Oh, that magical duo. We got a touchdown from Adrian, didn't we? We got one. Brian says, man, I wish AP would have had a better Hawk career. It would have been cool if he had a final one-off great final season with us, One last little just blip there before the end. This wasn't meant to be. Those running backs hit that wall, and he had a long run. You got to give him credit for that. But once they hit that wall, they hit that wall. Ricardo says, weird, I was watching some 1980 Seahawks game recently, and Kurt Warner really stood out on those teams. How does he rank compared to Alexander and Lynch? I wasn't born during his era. It's a great question. I'm going to say something right now that's probably going to be controversial for many Seahawks fans. But I think that the controversy that might exist for me saying the following statement on this, Ricardo, is going to exist in those fans that were born post-1990. Kurt Warner is the most talented back in Seattle Seahawks history. It doesn't often get remembered on this, Ricardo, because it was so long ago. But Warner, I believe, was the 3rd overall pick in the draft that he was taken by the Seattle Seahawks. He was taken just after, he was the very next pick after Eric Dickerson. So why that might seem crazy out my mouth to be said at first, let's think about this. He is the highest drafted running back in Seahawks history by a mile. And in that first year, I believe he led the AFC in rushing. He was part of a centerpiece to a team that went to the conference championship in the AFC in that first rookie year. He came back the next year, Ricardo, and he tore his knee apart on the AstroTurf in the Kingdome in the very first game of the very first drive of the season. And it was at a time where they could not rebuild the knee in the same kind of way as they once were able to do. So even when you watch those games, if you lock into it, Ricardo, I believe it's his right leg, watch him in 1986, watch him in 1987, watch him in 1988. And if you look at it and you really lock in on it, you can feel him very slightly dragging that leg along. So think about it. How great, and the tape you're probably watching is post him after the injury. Think about how great that is that he still could be a difference-making level of talent with a knee that was probably operating at about 65% throughout the course of his career. But then imagine what he would have been if he would have had that leg 100% of the time throughout the whole course of his career. So Kurt was awesome. His shake and bake move, I call it his little shake and bake. It's that old school, juke where it's got a little extra flavor to it. The pad's got a little extra bounce to it when they do it. Now it's all super efficient and tight. But back then, they give you a little bit of that shake and bake. You know what I mean? You get a little bit of that shake and bake. So Warner was great. Change of direction, vision, surprising power for a guy his size. But that leg, he was always dragging along after that injury. Always pulling that sucker along. Still able to have a really great career. But you do wonder what would happen if he would have been able to been fully good to go for a whole 10 years there with Chuck Knox. Real centerpiece pick for Chuck walking in the door too, by the way. I mean, there's a lot of plans on that with him. If he had been healthy, of him, that was at a time when they were the crown jewel of the offense, being running backs. Radu Turkan, thank you for the $2 donation. I appreciate you for that. Radu, had a great time the other night doing some Call of Duty action on there, kicking some ass, taking some names. Says, what is your grade on Travis Hunter? Curious. Travis Hunter will most likely, Radu, be one of my early blue chip prospects. I would say right now, in fact, Radu, he is the only one right now of the current college class. I haven't evaluated a lot of these guys yet, so Radu, I'm very early in the process. But he's the only guy I have right now with a blue chip grade in the draft currently as we stand. There'll be many more guys that rise to the surface on this. There are always going to be about 10 or 11 blue chip guys, but Travis Hunter is a pure lockdown corner on the outside. He can run man, he can run zone. He has got length, he's got size that is absolutely ideal for the position. He's got the change of direction and he's got speed. He has got excellent grade A elite ball skills for the position. This is part of the reason that he can go and play wide receiver on the other side of the ball. I do not see him as being a two-way player at the next level. He will be just a cornerback, but he's a cornerback that you're going to be able to take in the top 5 who gives you top 5 level ability. And he's, by the end of this year, I would estimate he's going to be, if he continues on his current trajectory, he'll be ready at that spot immediately. I mean, you bring him in and he's going to be a difference maker from day one. So probably a top 5 pick at this point in next year's draft, Radu, especially considering that we're probably not going to have as many quarterbacks being taken at the top of next year's draft because there just won't be as strong a class. So this kind of guy will probably end up then going that much higher. But he is legit. The ball skills, the lockdown ability, the hype around him is completely real, and he's got everything you want in a cornerback. He can run, he's got length, he's got the ball skills. Change of direction, stop and start. There's very little to his game that I think you can really pick apart as a cornerback, to be honest with you. It's just going to be about whether or not he can put that final year of tape and keep it going. Because, of course, we have had recent histories, as weird as it is, Radu. Remember Kalen King. Kalen King came out in his sophomore year, looked like the best cornerback in the country, was tearing it up, looked like a sure thing top 5, top 10 pick in the draft. And then he fell off a shelf this year for Penn State. I don't even know if he was drafted. He might have gone like the 6th or the 7th round. So, he's got to put the final year together. But my initial look on him with him on tape is that he is outstanding as a player. He can play. Seahawks Gaming. If Kyle Van Noy can have 10 sacks, I think Mafe can be an all-pro, especially with the inside rush with Reed, Murphy, and Leo. I could see it as well, Seahawks Gaming. He's got the ability to do it. And he put in that second year, you saw that leap grow. You saw that jump that you wanted to see year 2 from year 1. So it's, the next leap up is if he goes up another notch, if he takes that next step up, that's 14, 15 sacks. And that's going to be then paired with what we know from him to be grade A run defense. If you're a grade A run defender, you put up 14 to 15 sacks in the year. That's how you become an all-pro, or you're a bad run defender and you get 20 sacks. But he might be able to do it. It's going to be hard to get that all-pro Seahawks game because there's so many really good edges right now. You can just write them in as all-pros. Yeah. Myles Garrett, all-pro. Micah Parsons, all-pro. TJ Watt, all-pro. He's got to slide in there into that sort of that fourth realm there just to get to the second team all-pro with so many good guys. Chris says, Warner was one of my favorites. The 80s hometown bias, but Alexander had the benefit of one of the best O-lines. Warner would have been even more successful if it wasn't for the injury that sidelined him. That's my outlook on it as well, Chris. And one of the reasons that my all-time running back list is composed of, first and foremost, a Marshawn Lynch, and then number 2 is going to be Warner as my guy on the list, even over Alexander, because I think Alexander was a great back. I think Alexander deserves to be praised and revered by Seahawks fans. But everybody, you got to look at the circumstances and situations that they had to deal with. And Alexander was set up for a lot of success here with Seattle. The head coach who was here, with the offense that he played within, with the blockers that he had in front of him. It doesn't diminish Alexander to say he wasn't a good player. It just says these other guys were just a bit better and able to do a little bit more on their own. Not to mention the fact that I think in both Warner and Marshawn's case, they were much better pass receivers than Alexander and much better blockers in pass protection than Alexander was. But I'm a Warner guy too. Chris is with me on that. Warner better than Alexander. There we go, Chris. Warner was one of the first running backs that had that killer cutback move. Boy, did he ever. Yeah, he changed direction on a dime, is what they used to say. He can change direction on a dime. That was Warner. No extra steps. When he wanted to put the foot in the ground and go this way, he could do it. When he wanted to put the foot in the ground and go that way, and he could be at full speed doing it, he could do it. And back then, running backs didn't have that kind of lateral change of direction. Just fun back. That first year, man, you could see what a difference maker he was. His talent was right there with Dickerson. Dickerson considered an all-timer by many, maybe not the best, but one of the kind of all-time type talents. Warner was right there with that guy, step for step. You got the Topps Warner rookie card you're holding? Good rookie card. I think I got Warner up. Yeah, we got Warner up here. You can't see him, but hold on. That's Kurt Warner right there. It's maybe the card that you have. I can't do this. It's maybe the card you have, that one right there. That's Warner. You need an HD cam for it to see, but take my word for it. That's him back there, King. Shout out to, I think that was, Garth got me that one. I think he sent me that one, if I'm not mistaken. Regardless, I watched a 1985 game. He looked elite. Yeah. He really was. He had a wide range of skills he brought to the running back position. Just that during the running back heyday, man, during the golden era. And this guy was a pure talent for the position on top of it. Yeah, it's the Topps. I think it's Topps. Yep. Yes, sir. That's the Topps rookie card. Same one. Shout out to Garth. Garth got me that out there. But you got to show your respect for Warner, man. It's the injury that he sustained. It's like 10 years later, 15 years later, they would have been able to fix the knee and got him back out there, and he would have been a lot closer to 100%. And then you would have really seen a guy that could have almost probably pushed for being like an MVP level type player with his ability. But it's the nature of the sport, the brutality of the sport. Tomorrow is promised to no one. And as great a talent as you might be today, tomorrow it might be robbed from you fully. Tomorrow it might just be suddenly gone from you. why you got to cherish the sport at all times and cherish the great players as they're playing in the moment, because it doesn't last. It's not one of those, they'll be here for 20 years. I'll get back to it. I can get back to it. Enjoy it now. Savor it now. Brian says, Warner's life after football, an interesting story. Yeah, he's still in the Northwest too, if I'm not mistaken, Brian, right? Still kind of banging around the Northwest through these years. What I love about many of the Hawk players is they end up putting their roots down here, even if they're from some other areas, you know. Chris says, I wonder how Warner would have fared on Lumen's field versus the Dome's AstroTurf. Now, the AstroTurf, I'm a big believer, was one that shredded knees at a lot higher level in nature. And this has been better. The field turf surface, they're still, I think, trying to find the right surface. Like, I feel we're going to get to a place 20 years from now where they eventually will be playing on surfaces that don't allow any torn ACLs, that they have something that they can build within the surface or that they're minimized to the utmost at that point, almost like a ridiculous level, or a ridiculously good level, of course. So I do feel like eventually they'll get better and better with it, and it has improved. But that AstroTurf back in the day was so sticky, and you put your foot in it, and you couldn't even wear spikes on that surface. You'd have to wear these little circular spikes that you'd kind of wear, very tiny, like not even like a 0.5 millimeter coming off your shoe. Because if you went any longer, you risk getting that foot into that turf and getting stuck like Warner had happen, because he comes down on a play with the Browns and he gets that foot in, and you can see when his foot hits in there, it just hits in there wonky. Like he goes to plant and it sticks weird, and it locks in hard, where even for back then, and even with some of the blurry film that you're looking at, you can go, oh, something bad just happened there. And it looked incredibly awkward. The kind of foot plant that you wouldn't have from an awkward standpoint on the field turf. It was too sticky, and you had to wear some kind of, like, you couldn't wear the spikes, but you had to wear a little bit of something there, because it was still a slippery enough surface where if you just went out there with regular shoes, you are going to slide around. And if you got to be a running back, you do have to cut and cut tight. Brutal stuff. Martin Luther King, FedEx Field, said they can outdo AstroTurf. I mean, and it's better than the AstroTurf is. I'll say that, King, but it's still, I still feel like the injuries are still at way too high a place right now. I still feel like they have not necessarily. The thing that drives me crazy is the lack of willingness to go back to grass. Sometimes Mother Nature is just the best. And the injuries, if you look over a 20-year cumulative study of the injuries that have been sustained on the field turf surface versus grass, field surf surface is way more dangerous. It's easier to take care of. It's cheaper to manage. It's way more dangerous. And that's where I say that there's still a place that they can go to on this, of finding even better returns on these injury fronts, where, we're still having too many. It still could stand to be fixed, especially when you understand that grass literally kind of solves a lot of these problems if they can just go more to that. But then that increase their costs, and we know the owners aren't going to sign up for that. Chris is wonder he had some auto dealers for a while in Vancouver. That's right. Oh boy, says going to training camp this year due to all the new this year. Very excited for the new Seahawks. Hoping we can get out of this weird lull we seem to have gotten into since Russ's departure. Hopefully the shakeup helps that happen. Oh boy, I'm thinking it very well will. It may not be exactly right now this year, but I think in the long term that's going to be the way that this does play out. So I'm very stoked by that. A possibility of that you didn't just take a small step here, but boy, you didn't just go Dan Quinn. You didn't just sort of half measure this. You did a full measure. Anybody watching Breaking Bad, I've referenced this many times. One of the little bits I love of that show that they did is when you've got the extra detective guy talking about the time where he used a half measure when he should have used a full measure. And it's a great little speech he gives in that show, and it's very much what the Seahawks needed. Too much of the half measure. Dan Quinn would have been too much of the half measure, and now we need to get the full measure going. So I'm excited for that reason. I'm also going to training camp for the first time this year, po' boy. So I will be at training camp this year on the 26th and the 27th of July here. So if you are there, be on the lookout for me. Come say what's up if you happen to see me. I'd love to see a few Hawks nesters in the house if I can meet it. We're also going to be doing a meet and greet on on the 27th Saturday at 6 p.m. So still determining where, as people didn't like my initial choices. So we'll see if we can find some other better choices on that front of it. But we will be doing a meet and greet on Saturday as well after practice. So I'm heading to that as well. I'm stoked for the very same reasons, and you should be excited that way, man. You finally am shaking this thing up a little bit. Chris's ankle killer. Almost killed my ankles on turf in high school back in the 1800s or whenever I was there. Too long ago, laughing out loud. It gets hard to remember after so much time. But yeah, you walk on the AstroTurf. I did as well back in a little bit of the junior high school days. And when you walked on the turf, your first reaction is, oh, this is cool. This is really cool. And then you go, boy, that's really hard. And there's a little bit of stickiness to this. Why is it kind of tacky? And then you go, uh-oh. I'm going to have to be careful. Brian's, long live the king. Do some offensive players prefer field turf because of the fast track effect? No. It does indeed make them faster. There is going to be players that will tell you they are faster on field turf. But if you were to have the players polled with what is their, if you have the players polled with what their preference is to play on this or play on that, they would choose the grass surface because of the safety issue of it. Like, okay, I'm faster on this other surface, but I'm 4 times more likely to have a torn ACL. I don't enjoy being that much faster. And the being faster is relative, King, too, because the other guy on the other side of the field is going to be feeling faster too on this stuff. We're both going to be fast. So it's kind of negligible, my benefit from that. But they are very well aware of the difference between field turf and grass. There was a whole thing the players were trying to do, I think like a petition, even like a couple of years ago, to try to force the NFL's hand to just go to more grass. And then the NFL started cooking the books, and they started playing dirty pool because they came back and they'd say, well, this last year, injuries on field turf actually went down, so we don't want to change it because this 1 year of data shows that we've seen a drop in the bump and a bump and a bump. I go, okay, but, right? Let's take the 20 years rather than the 1 year you sort of cherry picked. Right, he says, I had no idea Kurt Warner had a car dealership until I moved to Vancouver in 1989. That was a real surprise. Definitely wouldn't put him naturally as well. He finishes up his football career in Seattle and he goes to Vancouver and gets car dealership. It's not the most natural of transitions there, Brian. Brian Meyer says that Kurt has done a lot for young people with disabilities and his sons. Try playing on the recent cement at Memorial Stadium, B. Oh, yeah, I wouldn't want to be doing that. That stuff, that was a brutal surface, that AstroTurf. All the way around, not just when you're planting your feet, but the scrapes and strawberries you'd get. Those players would come up and they'd have their whole first layer of skin tore off their elbows up to their arms. Just brutal. Randall McDaniel in the house. What's up, Randall? Hope you're doing well, brother. And thank you for the $20 donation. I really do appreciate you for that. He says, nice to see you, homie. Up here in Chelan on vacation. Randy Jr. and I just got after it after water slides. Can't wait for camp. Love reading who's excelling. I think Mac's going to have less music and a lot more focus on details. Agreed. It's going to be a quieter camp from the music standpoint. That's going to get turned down a little as there's a lot more teaching that needs to be done. There's a lot more. We're getting into the finer details here. It's not just big pictureville. We're getting down into the depths. We're splitting the hairs apart. We're going to get you guys to understand why I do what I do and what your role is within this defense to the nth degree. Chelan is such a beautiful place this time of year. It doesn't throw me off at how cold that lake can stay, even into the depths of summer where you're like, this is freezing. It's nice that it's 100 degrees out, but this is, I feel like I'm getting in an icicle. I'm taking an ice bath or something. I will say, Randall, Chelan was kind of underrated. I went to that water slide park. It's kind of underrated over there. It doesn't get spoken about a lot. No one really talks about going there and checking it out. You got over in the eastern side of the state, they've got the place out in Idaho everybody goes to with the water park there. That's pretty cool. But that one actually was nice. It's a fun one to go to, and it's pretty crowded too for being just little Chelan, and it's a pretty big water park. There's a lot of people that end up going to it, but it was a lot of fun. They got some legit slides there, man. It's going to be great too, to your point on that, with the stories coming out of camp. Who's going to excel? Who isn't? Who's the guy that we're not even talking about who suddenly rises to the surface? A McClendon Curtis type that the team is supposedly very high on and what he's doing right now. And we haven't talked about him as much in the mix in the guard battle that's going on, but he is being spoken about pretty nicely in the background of things. And we kind of stole him last year off a practice squad. So it's, that's the part I love to hear too, is the guys that you have you might hear about who we hadn't really been counting on. We hadn't really been thinking about that we're going to be a part of this team and an important part of the team. And then they rise to the surface. And then how does that get you to think about the team of even more on the top end of what they could maybe bring to the play? Like, how does this raise the upper end level of what the team could do? So it's going to be fun to hear what's coming out of camp and who's stepping forward into it, who's taken to this defense and this offense naturally, to hear Randall, how the players are feeling about these two schemes. And they've been very obviously positive throughout OTAs and some of the interviews they've done with them with the press conferences and stuff here and there. But just as they now get the pads on, get the pads to popping and what they got to say about what they're seeing from it. But I'm stoked, man, Randall. We're almost there. It has been a long off season. We have waited a very long period of time, and we have finally gotten here over the next couple of days. And I'm stoked. I'm jacked, brother. I can't wait for this. Let's go. By the way, hope Randy Jr. is doing good, man. Keep hitting those bombs there on the ball yard. Chris says cherry pick stats to save a buck. Elbow turf burns suck bigly. They do. That's a horrible pain, And boy, you just, one of the reasons I have a lot of respect for Steve Largent. Go back, watch Steve Largent back in the day go Superman, where he's literally like this, horizontal midair, and he's sticking his arms out here to catch the ball like this, and he's going to take it all right here and right here on the landing. And that's not the land of it. It's just hard when it hits. That hurts too, right? Ow, I just hurt on the land, but now I'm going to slide for about 10 feet, and I'm just going to slowly tear the skin off my arms as I do it. Those guys were tough. That was not for the meek. That was not for the weak. That was not for the ones that would be like, ow, I'm in pain, it hurts. You had to take it. And again, the reason I have the respect guy like Largent is he'd throw that body out there and say, hell with my body, I'm making the catch. I don't care how much I bleed. I'm making the catch. So it's going to be a fun time of year this year, Randall. First time in 14 years, we've got a new coach in, bringing a new scheme, an exciting scheme, on both sides of the ball, offensively and defense. It's all going to be new, fresh, something that's just nice in that. But I'm stoked for it too, man. I can't wait. I'll be there this week for a couple days. Really looking forward to it. First time I've been to a training camp in my life, Randall. So and this is going to definitely be a yearly event now going forward. Randall, thank you for the $2 donation as well. I appreciate you for that. He says Dickerson ran for 4,000 yards his first 2 years. That is crazy. Dickerson was a monster in those first 2 years. He really was. He had a pretty good offensive line there with the Rams, but I think they had the Jackie Harris. They had the one Hall of Famer on the line at the time, but it wasn't an insane offensive line. He had, I think, Everett there. Jim Everett was his quarterback at the time, Randall, so it wasn't anything crazy there either. He didn't have a lot of awesome receivers on the outside. It wasn't like Flipper Anderson, I think, was their number one wide receiver at that time. So my point being is that, he was kind of the focal point. He was also the point that the defenses could concentrate on that first 2 years. He was the number 2 overall selection in the draft, so it wasn't like teams weren't going to put him as a point of emphasis and looking at him. But yet he still went out and got his yards. And when you watch him on his highlights, what stands out is he was just one of those guys where if he got through the hole, he was gone. If you didn't get a hand on him in the hole, if you didn't have him slow down, if you let him get up to speed, he was taking off and it was going to be a touchdown. And he just had that upright running style that just almost didn't look like he was running fast, but he was flying. And yeah, he had an amazing start to his career. He's an all-timer. You've got your upper rung of all-timers, your best of the best types, I think, that I'd put into where I'd say Walter Payton, Barry Sanders, Jim Brown. Your best of the best in those upper echelon guys. And then you'd have your Hall of Famers at just the next level below that. And I think Eric Dickerson would be in my just next level below that of Hall of Famers from a running back standpoint, Randall. Brian Myers says Dickerson's such a badass. There's film out there of him going full speed up the middle, and a safety hits him coming on full on the thigh pads and flying off of him. Yeah, he's got that explosion of power thing, because when he would run, and he got up to that speed, it was a little bit for a while where I would sometimes put the Derrick Henry comparisons to an Eric Dickerson, where it was a bit of the similar thing. If you could get to them before they got through the hole, they weren't going to necessarily dance around you. They weren't going to necessarily juke you out of your shoes. But if you didn't get to that hole in time, if they got up to full speed, it was going to be game over, not just because he could outrun you, but because once he got up to that full speed, it's a little bit like, this was like Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley wasn't a pure power back, but if he got up to full speed and you try to take him on after he's up to full speed in the middle of the field, you might bounce off of him. And in fact, it might be very likely. And yeah, that was the case with Dickerson, where that speed goes to explosive power. It's how that kind of can work in football. And yeah, you got a safety coming down like that, takes the wrong angle. He's at the right speed point. You haven't slowed him down, and he's done at that point. He's gone. So there's backs that are built like that, where it's just like, you got to catch him within their first 3 or 4 steps. And that's why I like the Henry comp, because the same way, if you catch Henry within the 3 or 4 steps, you can make him look pedestrian. But if you get him past the 3 or 4 steps and he looks like a superhero, it's kind of wild. Oh boy. Who do you think is a player Seahawks fans are sleeping on most as opposed to the big media? My nomination is Noah Fant on offense and Uchenna on D. Oh, those are great selections. Oh boy. Great selections. Well, so that I don't double up on you necessarily, Paul Boy, let me choose 2 different ones, though I think yours are as good at any picks, the ones that you chose. So I don't know if I necessarily counter the ones you selected. I'm going to say Kenneth Walker. He doesn't get talked a lot about by the fan base, but this is a guy that could end up being very much the focal point of your offense a little bit, or the guy that ends up getting more yards than anybody else on your offense for you, collectively speaking. So I think he is being slept a little bit on, offensively speaking. Defensively, a little harder to pinpoint for me. I'm going to go with Derek Hall. Just because I still do go back to my initial evaluation of him coming out. And last year was rough. And he didn't give us a lot to feel optimistic about with that last year, in that first year. But it was a rookie season. And we did see in a guy like Boye Mafe him have a tough opening year as far as rushing the passer goes, at least. He was good as a run defender, but he wasn't necessarily strong in rushing the passer, and that came to the forefront in year 2. So maybe Derek Hall would be my other guy as the guy that would be the guy that fans are kind of sleeping on a little bit. That or Julian Love, who's a really good fit with his skill set to this defense. And he can be used all over the place and be comfortable being used all over the place. But Uchenna's great, and Noah Fant are 2 great picks on your part. Definitely not bad there. Randall, thank you for the $2 donation. He says, we had a second pick in the 1983 and traded to the Rams. 8 Hall of Famers. That's a hell of a draft. That's a hell of a draft when you got drafts like that. You know what I mean? So we did some weird things in the 80s, Randall. Our drafting, our willingness to trade, we would be on the precipice at times of sometimes doing smart trades or getting the right guys or making great picks, and we'd get this close to it, and then something would unseat it. For instance, you have, we were in on the John Elway trade, and we just weren't willing to give up 1 extra first-round pick to get John Elway. How much that would have changed, the outlook of things. I've long referenced, Randall, you've got the Brett Favre, Dan McGuire situation, where Chuck Knox wanted Brett Favre. That would have been a great fit between Favre and Chuck. But the owner overruled him and went with Mark McGuire. So you did some weird things at times in the 80s with some of your picks. You got the Brian Bosworth supplemental draft that lost you the first round pick. A lot of oddities in the way that we operated in that 80s. And maybe that's what you got to do at times as a team that's a small market team with no money, is try to do a whole bunch of left turns hoping that it eventually makes you right. I suppose that was a bit of their process and why they did it that way. But strange, Randall, nonetheless on that. Hell of a draft, that 1983 draft. There you got Randall. You got Elway went first. We could have traded up for him. Dickerson went second. Warner went third. Got Bruce Matthews to the Oilers. There's a Hall of Famer. Jim Kelly. Willie Gault. He's a good receiver for the Bears. Joey Browner. I was going to say, Joey Browner won no Hall of Fame. A lot of good players on top of the Hall of Famers, too. Jim Jeffcoat was a good player. I think Dave Remington was pretty good. Dan Marino. Darryl Green. Ellard was a good player. Even the second round was pretty good here, Randall. Henry Ellard, Wes Hopkins, Marshall, Talley. These are all Pro Bowlers. Roger Craig. Dave Dewerson. Hell of a draft, man. Hell of a draft. Kelly Stafford. Stauffer was, he was 87, I think, right? I want to say Kelly was 87-ish. Something like that. Something like that. Appreciate you, Randall, though, man. Thanks for all the donos. Thank you for all the donations. Yeah. Good time here. Just want to let you guys know, Underdog Fantasy's got some great bets going on this year. They're sponsoring the Nest and will continue to be sponsoring the Nest here throughout the course of this year. So you can use my code today, NEST, and they will match you up to 100% of $100 of your first deposit. $100 from me to you when you use the Underdog Fantasy app. There are restrictions that do apply in the state of Washington. Unfortunately, they won't let you get going up there in the state of Washington. But if you are in a casino in the state of Washington, you can use the app in full. It will sponsor you up to $100 that first deposit. Just use my code or click the top, the link in the description section below, and they will take you there and fit you out in that way as well. So thank you to Underdog Fantasy for sponsoring the channel throughout this year and into the next, as we will be re-upping them with them as our sponsor here into the next year. Very, very proud of that. Thank you guys for using that code as you guys are, and I'll be getting my bets on into there. We weren't able to quite come to a solution here today on some of the breweries that I put out for potential landing spots for us to meet up at, but we are going to be meeting up on the 27th. So July 27th, I will be in Seattle Saturday. So if you are off on that Saturday 27th, be on the lookout. This Wednesday, I will be announcing where I will be located at, where we're going to be doing the meet and greet. I'm trying to figure that out right now. So it may be Hop and Jacks up in Redmond, or we may be trying to get down into a little bit more closer down to the middle of the road if I can, but we'll try to swing that one way or the other. If you have some suggestions, please do put that down in the comments or link below, and I'll take a look at some of those places. As I'm not picky, I just don't want to go too far away from where I'll be in my kind of home base of Renton when I come back into town a little bit. So not trying to get down to Everett, if you know what I mean, or Marysville or some weird stuff like that. But yeah. I'll let you guys know about that on the 24th here. We'll be doing a show on some of the camp battles going on here at training camp here in a couple of days. So we will be back really soon on that front of it. Brian says, Jeff Coate, Maxwell, Richardson, round one, all that D that Marcus Dupree shredded in the Fiesta Bowl. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What are you going to do, It's Arizona State, Brian. You know what I mean? When was the last time Arizona State's been good? I got to go back to Plummer's days to find them even decent. Like almost every college program's had at least a little, in my lifetime, has had a little bit of a run somewhere. And not Arizona State. Chris says, I still cringe at the Meyer pick, but my boy Bledsoe went first, so I do wonder if Bledsoe would have favored much better with the crap O-line, though. I can say that I think that the team would have gone for Bledsoe if he was the pick, Chris. Talking with Randy Mueller, the guy that was the general manager at the time. That was the impression I got from him. So I don't know if he would have held up better behind that offensive line with his lack of mobility that he had a little bit versus Meyer, who was very mobile. But I do think Bledsoe would have had a better chance to be more successful here than Meyer did because he was just a better player. And I think that especially once you got to the place of bringing in a guy like Erickson, pairing a guy like Erickson up with Bledsoe would have been a wonderful fit. You would have had to fix the offensive line. There's no doubt about that. But I think there would have been a way to get it done. Always Hand Grenade says just pick a place close to Camp B. I may end up just doing it that way. So we tried a couple options today. Everybody never said something else. So yeah, I just want to get an easy outdoor spot that's not, I don't have to travel too far to hop to, and we can just kind of meet there. What's up, Swedish? Good to have you back in the house, man. Chris says meet up in Chelan. Exactly. Meet at the water slides. So we'll have to do it. That's how we'll have to get it done. All right, well, folks, let's get the last couple questions on in here tonight, and we will put a wrap up on this as we're just about to 4 hours today on the stream. If you guys could for me to please bam that like button for me. It does help out this channel. If you're not subscribed up, maybe get subscribed up too as well. Come on now. What are you waiting for? It's free. It's free. But now let's get the last few in here, and we'll pair this over into Wednesday. So be back very soon. Very soon. All right. Looks like we're good to go. Well, I want to thank all of the donators and supporters of the channel, my members. You guys are awesome. Randall McDaniel, longtime supporter here. Radu Turkin, you are as the same. Tony Borges, same thing here there as well. Long live the king multiple times over. Silas. Pretentious Cameron, Real Cheese, Roxanne, Roll. Really appreciate all of you guys for all of the support here to the channel. Jeffrey A. Thistle, and of course, my man Isaac Limpnick. I really, really thank you guys all for your guys' constant support here on the channel. You guys allow me to do what I do here. I do this full time. I'm not going to ever be able to do it really off that ad revenue here with YouTube. It's because you guys do bring that support in on that side of it. You guys do donate in the way you do, and you allow me to be able to chase my dream here, which is running this football channel. So I want to thank you guys, all of you guys on that from the bottom of my heart. We got a jam-packed schedule coming up here over the next week. I will be back on Wednesday. We're going to be doing a meet and greet on Saturday. I'm going to training camp 2 days. I'm going to try to stream at least 1 or 2 of those days as well and give you guys some updates on what I saw from training camp. So we've got a lot on deck as we're now going to officially here kick off this NFL season with the true beginning of training camp. If you're not hyped up, if you don't got the engines revving up, we'll rev them up now. We're getting ready to make a little bit of noise. Chris will finish off with any surprise cuts or signing predictions or trade deadline. Surprise cuts. I think that Darrell Taylor is a guy that could be a surprise quote unquote cut. Dwayne Eskridge, I don't know if you'd be considering him a surprise cut, but he could be another guy that, falls into that kind of into that frame of things. I don't think that there'll be any other cuts. There's certainly a team they could trade, like they've got a glut of cornerbacks. There could be a trade of a cornerback for a back end draft pick, like a 4th, 5th rounder or something, if they could swing something like that. So signing wise, I don't think that they're going to sign anybody, Chris, unless the inside linebacker health doesn't start to get better. Those guys can't get on the field, then they're going to probably do something there and pick somebody up. But I would estimate right now, Chris, that there's probably not going to be any actual further signings here. Maybe camp fodder signings, but not any real major signings or not even major signings, just a guy that you'd look to have start games for you as we get into the year. The trade deadline's a little bit of a tougher one to predict. Does John, if you're into the year and you're making, if you're at the end of the year and, because remember this year, the trade deadline's been pushed back a little bit. So if you're into week 8 or 9 and you're at the top of the division or you're right in the thick of it in the playoff hunt, we've been taught in prior years that John Schneider absolutely is willing to go for it. But how much of that was Coach Carroll pushing him to do it? How much of that was John Schneider just doing it on his own? We don't really know on that part of it, Chris. So that's the harder part to predict because we don't know how much John was unfettered in that way. Was Coach Carroll banging down his door last year going, get me Williams, and John's like, I really want to keep the second round pick. I don't know. And so that's the part we'll have to see with John in the way that he operates without Pete here. I would estimate that he's still going to remain fairly active and willing at the trade deadline if the right deal comes down the pike. So, but that would necessitate, of course, Chris, us probably being a true contender at that point. Isaac says, so start to get the year started. Let's effing go Hawks. Let's go. Mike Gam says he's getting pumped up. Let's go, Mike. Ryan says, go Hawks. Let's go Hawks. You should be stoked, man. Changes come our way. Chris says, Eskridge should be a welcome cut. Not as much of a surprise, but more of a welcome. More of a welcome. Well, I'm pumped up as well, Mike. There is a dream that dreams inside of me. There is a vision that I have of an upcoming season. Am I hungry for my team to be a contender? You're damn right. Am I tired of being middle of the road? You're damn right. Am I tired of the mediocre? Am I tired of being just a little bit better than average? Yes, sir. But the thing that I've watched in analyzing this team and looking at them as closely as I can look at them for the last 5 years is I've seen a team held back by philosophies in place that at one time brought this team to the greatest of heights, but now see them impinged, held down, reduced, lessened. To the point that the talent felt there, to the point that it felt like you had enough to go out there and make noise in this wide open NFC over the past couple of years, but you were almost silent. And those things have now been removed this offseason. The weight lifted up off of your shoulders. It doesn't guarantee success. It certainly doesn't guarantee immediate success. But it does mean that the team is taking care of those things that have held them back now for years. New things may arise. Ugly, bad problems may suddenly pop up. We may come to find Mike Macdonald can't head coach in the NFL. But they will be new issues, new problems, things that weren't foreseeable. And those are a little bit more easy to understand than those issues that persist and last and continue on through the years, almost never ending. So you should be hyped, my fellow Seahawks fans. Not because you're blindly loving this team, not because you have blind bias for this team, but because this team is making smart decisions and moves, and they're working to solve and fix those things that have been problematic for them. And once you fix the problems, once you clean up your backyard, anything's possible at that point. Chris is going to finish us off real nice with a big, fat $20 donation. Chris, I salute you, sir. You're awesome for that donation and finishing us off in this way, man. That puts a smile on my face. Thank you for that, brother. Says, hoping to make it to the meet and greet training camp. Got a car show going on, so I don't know if I'll make it. Have a beer on me. Well, bet on that, Chris. Thank you for the $20 donation. And the goal will be for me to do this as a yearly basis thing. And hopefully, as we go along through the years on this, as we go into next year, maybe there'll be a chance I can do more of a full week of training camp. And then within a full week of training camp, there's more of a chance to do a couple of different greets points to, make sure we kind of get everybody included, including some of the younger guys, younger folks out there that can't necessarily get in the bars, being a little underage. So, we'll definitely have these going in the future. If you can't make this one, Chris, I want to make this a part of what we do at the show, even on just a yearly basis thing. So I will be sure to have a beer on you, my man. And thank you. Thank you so much for the $20 donation. I hope to see you out there at camp or the meet and greet, either way. I know it's hard with those car shows because they have some cool cars out there. So I get that part of it. But thank you, man, for all of your support on the channel as well, Chris. No, that's not the first time you dropped many donations on the channel before. And as I say, with you guys are amazing to allow me to be able to do this. So many people in my position wouldn't be able to do what I do here 24/7, 365, run this channel and this show because you guys show the love and the support to me in the way that you guys do. And I do hope you guys all understand it from the bottom of my heart. It's really, really, really appreciated because this place doesn't go. I don't get to do this in this way. I'm out there working some IT job right now and doing this on the side if it isn't for you guys. So thank you so much, Chris, Randall, all of you folks that have donated so many times over to the channel, because it's no small thing. It's a major thing, and it does propel this channel to be able to do what we're going to do. And we're going to have a kick-ass year this year on this channel, and it's because of you guys. So thank you for that. We will be back here in just a couple of days. No time at all. I'll have this thing flipped around to you guys on that side of it. Swedish Snowby says, love the Seahawks sermons. I'm going to preach, Swedish. I'm going to bring my fellow Seahawks fans to this side of the field. You're going to feel the power of a Seahawk win. You are going to feel the power of a contending team. You are going to feel a team rise to the top of the crop. And they are going to do it behind new leadership. They are going to do it behind great talent. Do not question the purpose and resolve of this team, for we are about to fly high, my fellow Seahawks people. Take flight and get ready to dominate. My name is Brandon Kane. This is the Hawks Nest. Please hit that like button. Please subscribe up. But beyond all of that, by God, do not you ever forget, you're about to go into an NFL season. You have a team stocked to the gills with talent. You've got one of the brightest young minds in the NFL. You got a general manager who's been kicking ass all off season long. I shouldn't have to remind you. I shouldn't have to tell you. I shouldn't have to hype you up. But I'm going to do it anyway. Don't you? Ooh, we got one more donut. Hold on. I ain't gonna lose that donut, Primo. Thank you for the $5 donation, Primo. I appreciate you for that. He says, hey, Brando. Hope all is good with you. Go Hawks. Hey, man, all is great with me, Primo. We had a great show today. My people chopped it up like I always know you guys will. The respect was here from everybody inside, just talking it over, discussing this team, looking at it through the different lenses is how we look through it, doing what we do here, Primo. You know, happier than a pig in mud when I'm able to do this show and do it with you guys, because we're all on the same page. You guys bring the goods every single time I go live, and I'm not talking about the donos. I'm talking about the chat, and I'm talking about keeping me laughing, keeping me thinking, keeping me on my toes. So I'm always a happy man when I'm able to do this live. It always puts a smile on my face, Primo. I thank you for the support, man, and finishing off right. You guys are amazing in that respect. We're about to go out this season and potentially shock the world, shock the nation, shock the pundits. Everybody's telling you right now that your Seattle Seahawks ain't going to be doing nothing. They're telling you got a new coach in the house. That means you're going to have to wait. But they don't know about us in the Pacific Northwest. We don't wait. They like to think about us here in the Pacific Northwest that we just learned how to start winning once Coach Carroll walked in the door. They don't know us. That standard was established 25 years ago when Paul Allen walked in the door. That is the standard. We're not spoiled in wanting our winning ways. It's a standard, and there's a difference. Get ready, my Seahawks fans. Get ready for a season that nobody's counting on. Get ready for this team to surprise a lot of folks out there by being a whole lot better than they're telling you they're going to be. And just enjoy it. Because we're about to head into a new great golden era of Seahawks football. And it's going to be fun to watch. My name is Brandon King. Appreciate you watching. Hit the like, hit the sub. But by God, beyond all that, don't you forget as we are on the precipice. Don't you ever forget as we're on the precipice. We are right on the edge. We're about to jump off that cliff, but we're not going to fall. We're going to fly. Let's fly, Seahawks fans. And do not ever you forget. By God, never do. Go Hawks.